This boy woke up from a coma in a hospital. His name was now Asai Kyosuke, a student at the academy. But in the past, he was a legend of magic, a mage with the time attribute. And because of that, he was betrayed by his own comrades and by the girl he loved. Now 20 years in the future, he has been reborn in the body of a student with the void attribute, the power that devours everything. Asai laughed. Time made him dangerous, but void will make him unstoppable. If he trains this body, he will become a monster of magic and take his revenge. One day, portals leading to dungeons suddenly appeared all over the world. From within, monsters of all kinds began to pour out endlessly. Because of this, the only ones capable of stopping them were those who had awakened magical abilities. Among these heroes were a knight named Ingolf von Dietz and the mage Claudia Bourgeot from the Golden Seekers Guild. Fighting alongside them were Nathaniel Cavell, Iwako Hideki, and Lei Ruoxi. Amid the chaos, someone lay on the ground, desperately crying for help. While begging for a quick rescue, the young woman cried that there were too many casualties. Just ahead, a monster prepared to attack a helpless civilian. Suddenly, someone struck the creature head-on. The impact caused a massive explosion. Then, a man appeared on the scene and asked if everyone was okay. Introducing himself as Misato Kyoichiro, he declared he would handle the situation from now on. He then turned to face the horde of monsters, concentrating energy in his hand. With a focused gaze, he prepared to strike. Moments later, he unleashed a series of attacks that wiped out all the creatures before him. Seeing this, the swordsman remarked that he was incredible for facing so many monsters alone. Then, the cultivator explained that with his time magic, he could see the future and predict the monster's movements. She then concluded that the man was no longer human. Meanwhile, more creatures continued to emerge from the portal in the middle of the city. After defeating the entire horde, the mage turned to a final monster near the portal and said, "All right." He finished it off by slitting its throat and wondered if that was the last one. Then he declared that with this, he could protect people's peace. Immediately, he announced aloud that he was going to seal the portal. However, he was caught off guard by a magic attack that struck him from behind. It sent him skidding several meters into the portal. On the ground, he watched as the portal was enveloped in the chains of a magic seal. Not understanding, he indignantly wondered what was happening. He then realized he had never foreseen a future like this before. Turning to his companions, he demanded to know why they did it, and if they were all in on the plan. In response, the archer simply asked, "Why, you ask?" Nathaniel then explained that it was precisely because he didn't know what was going on that he was betrayed. In disbelief, the betrayed man asked what he meant by that. The cold-eyed woman said it was because he was a level 100 monster with time magic, while the blonde remarked they just wanted to make money safely. At that, Ingolf and the Japanese man complained that he only wanted to help people and ended up putting everyone in danger. Nathaniel then stated that, despite everything, today would be the last time. Saying his goodbyes, he tells him they won't see him again and leaves him behind. Outraged, the betrayed man yells that they can't be serious and demands they get him out. He then remembers how, as their leader, he desperately tried to protect the world from monsters, never understanding the betrayal. His only goal was to protect everyone, without exception. With this in mind, he punches the barrier and wonders why this is happening. Just behind him, the dungeon's creatures begin to close in. With no time to waste, the mage leaps and attacks the giant serpent charging at him. Suddenly, he notices something unexpected. Before him, an endless horde of monsters awaited. Using his future sight, he believes he can escape. However, his vision of the future shatters, showing only his tragic end in the monster's claws. With a bitter smile, he understands that future no longer exists. Even so, he continues to fight bravely against the relentlessly advancing creatures. Gathering his last ounce of strength, he concentrates all his remaining energy into his fist. He then throws himself into the middle of the horde, unleashing one last powerful attack. Moments later, he falls to his knees, completely wounded and exhausted, his body covered in blood. He realizes he couldn't change the future. Facing the approaching monsters, he understands there seems to be no other choice. He then wonders if he should just accept his death there. However, a new resolve takes hold of his mind. Vowing not to die like this, he declares he will reincarnate and become stronger. With that, he promises to reach the pinnacle of his strength to get his revenge on all of them. All that rage and despair become the fuel for his determination. He then vows to endure until the right day comes, when he can avenge his regrets and settle the score with those who betrayed him. And so, his body is consumed by an intense light as the monsters surround him. Amidst the explosion of energy, he lets out a final cry of agony. When the light faded, he opened his eyes in a new place. As soon as he awoke, he sat up on the edge of a bed. He then stood up and looked at himself in the mirror, noticing his new appearance. A smile confirmed that the reincarnation had worked. Looking around the hospital room at the unfamiliar machines, he wondered how many years had passed. He then feared that if 100 years had passed, he wouldn't be able to get revenge on his former companions. As he turned, something on a piece of furniture caught his eye. It was the student ID of the body's owner, revealing that only 20 years had gone by. Suddenly, a detail on the ID card surprised him. The ID showed that the boy's name was Asai Kyosuke and his attribute was void. At this, a satisfied smile spread across his face. Then, he began to laugh, unable to contain himself. He remembered that in his past life, despite being feared for his time attribute, he had realized he'd reached a limit to his strength. Not even his clairvoyance could see the true depth of the void attribute's power. With that in mind, he said he felt sorry for the boy. Only he knew that the void attribute was the strongest, a power no one in his previous life possessed. Since it was a rare attribute, no one knew how to train it, which was why the boy was still at level 1. He figured the boy was often mocked for having a power considered a no attribute. He then promised the boy not to worry, as he would make his name known throughout the world as the strongest adventurer. Thanks to his old clairvoyance skill, he knew exactly how to train the void attribute. With this new power, he declared he would become the strongest of all. Furthermore, he swore he would make those traitors regret betraying him and causing his death. To get revenge on them, he understands he first needs to level up. With that in mind, he lies back down on the bed to begin. The void attribute, as the name suggests, is related to the magic of controlling nothingness. Its essence lies in the ability to freely project imagination into reality. After all, while everyone can imagine things, making them real is the hard part. Luckily, he notices his body is badly injured, providing the perfect opportunity to apply the healing image he has in mind. Focusing, he begins to visualize the process. He pictures every cell in his body being restored by magic. Slowly, the energy begins to heal the wounds on his arm. With a smile, he confirms the technique worked. However, he notes that since it's a rudimentary spell, the recovery speed isn't great, and his internal organs aren't healed. He knows that by using the ability repeatedly, his level will increase, and his power to turn imagination into reality will also improve. This way, the range of images he can bring to life will continue to expand. With this, he'll be able to create and use many different types of magic until he reaches a point where the image in his mind can be fully realized exactly as it is in reality. A faint smile appears on his face as he prepares himself. Suddenly, a doctor enters the room and exclaims that he's finally awake. The doctor then warns him not to move yet, explaining that he was severely injured in a monster attack. Lying there, he finally understands that this is what happened to the boy's body. The doctor remarks that for him to wake up under these circumstances, it's as if the saintess granted him a miracle. Kyosuke then asks what the doctor means by saintess. The doctor then asks if he really doesn't know what he's talking about. The doctor then shouts about the saintess of the pentagram saints, but the boy admits to himself that he doesn't know them either. The doctor agrees, saying it's natural for him to be confused since he just regained consciousness. Next, the doctor informs him he'll do a full examination and asks him to wait while he prepares everything. Alone, he wonders if the saintess and the pentagram saints are clans or adventurers that emerged in the last 20 years. Although leveling up is a must, he knows he first needs to get up to speed on current events. With this in mind, he grabs the remote to turn on the television. That day's special report is about the SSS-class dungeon disaster from 20 years ago, which he finds perfect for learning about the incident where he was betrayed. The news report then reveals that the one responsible for the incident was the leader of the Golden Seekers, a level 100 user of the time attribute named Misato Kyoichiro. Unable to believe what he's hearing, Kyosuke screams in complete shock. He then wonders what the hell it means that he was named the culprit. The report continues, explaining that the other members of the Golden Seekers stopped him from using the chaos to take over the world. Thus, these great heroes, now known as the Pentagram Saints, defeated Misato and successfully sealed the dungeon. The host concludes that, to this day, the Pentagram Saints continue to lead the world in various fields. Next, the news announces they have invited experts to discuss the matter. Faced with this farce, the reincarnated man can't hold back and begins to laugh bitterly. He then realizes they didn't just betray him, they also dragged his dignity through the mud. With this, he understands he was simply sacrificed by them. Then, they shamelessly reap the rewards, being hailed by the world as so-called heroes. Clenching the remote tightly, he swears he will not forgive them. He then reinforces to himself that there's no way he can forgive what they've done. With eyes full of hatred, he promises he will send every one of them to hell. Finally, he takes a deep breath to try and calm himself for a moment. However, he concludes that he needs to be careful with his next steps. After all, he can't risk being detected by his old comrade's radar. Remembering something, he picks up the cell phone that was on the table. He then starts searching for the academy the boy attended. With a smile, he confirms that, just as he thought, the academy's director is the Pentagram Saint, Iwako Hideki. He then celebrates his luck for already knowing the location of one of his targets right after waking up. However, he knows the man is cautious and doesn't show his weaknesses easily. He recognizes that the level difference between them is too great, making it impossible to defeat him now. With that, he throws himself back on the bed, frustrated with the situation. He concludes he can't do anything at level 1, and that for now, He'll try to level up while looking for him. Clenching his fist, he declares that Iwako just has to wait, as he will be the first target. A few weeks pass. Now recovered, he stretches and confirms that he can move without any issues. The doctor, in disbelief, says he can't believe he recovered so completely in such a short time. As the doctor wonders if it was a blessing from the saintess, Kyosuke interrupts him and says it was nothing like that. He then states with conviction that it was all thanks to his own power. He then thanks the doctor for taking care of him, who in turn tells him to take care. Outside, he looks at the city and states that he's finished with his preparations. With that, he notes that his current level should be enough for now. With a confident smile, he decides it's time to warm up by heading to a dungeon. Previously, a doctor told Kyosuke that the former owner of his body lost his entire family in an accident. Afterward, he walks alone through the city. He then admits he feels a little bad for the Kyosuke who was here before. Still, he concludes this is a good thing, since it now means he can do whatever he wants. His steps suddenly stop. Standing before a portal, he wonders if this is the place he's been looking for. Aiming to level up and get stronger, he decides he wants to test his skills there. As he approaches the entrance, he presents his ID at the counter. However, a guard stops him and yells for him to wait. Unfazed, he just asks what's wrong. The guard then points to the ID and exclaims that his level is only 27, when the minimum to enter as a group is 30. Next, the man asks if he plans to go in alone, but the boy replies that rule only applies in normal cases, saying, however, he forcefully breaks free from the guard's grip. He then shows his ID and states that as a student of the Adventurer's Academy, everything will be fine as long as he signs the consent form. He then reveals he researched this while he was in the hospital, leaving the guard speechless. Suddenly, a young man's voice tells the guard to stop. Kyosuke turns to a group of boys. Their leader says that's enough, commenting that the guard was just worried and that a rookie like him should know his place. Kyosuke just watches the trio in silence. Ignoring the taunt, he turns back to the guard and asks if he just needs to sign the form. While the man desperately tries to stop him, he starts signing the document. After finishing, he turns and asks if there's any other problem. Before entering the portal, he thanks the guard for his concern as the man watches him leave. Right after, the clerk turns to the group and asks them to please follow the boy. He explains that letting him go alone is suicide, but the group's leader shows no interest. One of the guys asks why they would do that, but the one with purple hair says this could actually be a good thing. He continues, hinting at what they could do if no one was watching. With a smile, the guy concludes that if something happened to Kyosuke, it wouldn't be a problem at all. With that, the trio runs toward the portal, yelling that the tough guy wannabe needs another 100 years of training. Thinking they were going to help, the guard thanked them and said he was counting on them. Inside the portal, the trio moved through the dark dungeon corridor. It was then that the leader revealed their real plan. They would do what they always do, eliminate the boy, and blame the monsters for it. He said that idiots like him were perfect to use as bait. With a cynical smile, he showed a bag full of items, concluding this was how they lined their own pockets. Without wasting time, they rushed off in search of their target. 10 minutes passed, and the chase already had them out of breath. Even running in a straight line, they still hadn't managed to catch up to the boy. That's when one of them pointed ahead and shouted. Before their eyes, Kyosuke was fighting terrifying monsters, all bigger than him. His eyes glowed with newly awakened power as he faced the enemies head-on. Without hesitation, he launched a powerful wave of fire, incinerating some of the creatures. Immediately after, he gathered a distinct energy in his hand. With a single gesture, he fused the two powers into one devastating attack. The explosion obliterated all the monsters on the battlefield. When the dust settled, he alone remained standing amidst the wreckage. Stunned, the group's leader questioned how someone could defeat a D-rank monster alone, but before he could get an answer, the red-haired guy pointed to something on the ground. It was a rare item, and he already calculated that selling it would guarantee a comfortable life for 6 months. One of his accomplices commented that the kid hadn't even noticed its value yet. For them, the plan was clear. Once they eliminated Kyosuke, the item would be theirs. Without hesitation, the three of them charged in to attack. The two subordinates rushed forward while the leader watched. At the right moment, he yelled for them to finish the boy right then and there. But Kyosuke just muttered, as if disapproving of the situation. He raised his eyes and asked if they really thought they were being clever. Easily dodging their blows, he reflected that no matter the era, there would always be worms trying to steal what belongs to others. Shocked, the two asked how he could dodge without even looking. The leader roared that it was pure luck, and furious, launched a blast of fire from behind. He ordered him to just die already. Coldly, Kyosuke channeled energy into his fist. In an instant, he landed a direct punch to the guy's abdomen. The impact was so strong that the leader was knocked unconscious instantly. His body flew through the air until it violently hit the wall, destroying it several feet deep. When the dust settled, there he was, thrown to the ground, legs up, with the structure completely demolished. Looking at the result, Kyosuke declared that for scum like them, he would have no mercy. He stated that he would use every one of them as a stepping stone, without hesitation. With the aura of his power pulsing intensely around his body, he made a promise. His revenge started here. Outside, the portal remains open in front of the school. A short time later, a new person enters the dungeon. Iwao's subordinate, Yoichi Tsudai, arrives. having heard a student from the academy had entered alone. However, he finds fallen rookie hunters and wonders why they would be dead here. Faced with the scene, Tsudai questions what the hell happened in this place. Later that night, the scene shifts to an apartment. In his room, Kyosuke reflects on how he leveled up and tested his magic in the rank D dungeon. Then, he looks at his ID and reveals his new spell is called Information Obscurity. He explains that it not only lets him fake his level, but also erase entry logs, concluding that it's extremely useful. Lying in his bed, he remarks that tomorrow is his first day at the academy when he notices something on his phone. He sees unread messages from a day ago, demanding money and calling him attributeless. Reading the taunts, he understands the situation and scoffs at what he sees. The next morning, several students arrive in the academy's courtyard. As he walks, he hears a voice calling him from behind. His classmate, Asahi Karin, says good morning and asks if he's feeling better. He thanks her for her concern and says he's fine now. As the girl says she was very worried, Kyosuke notes that the previous owner of this body had people who cared about him. Soon, a voice interrupts them, mocking the attributeless kid who barely escaped death. The group's leader approaches and says that for protecting a weak level 1, he should get something in return. With a smirk, the guy continues, saying he's short on cash and that Kyosuke surely brought what he wants. In that moment, he remembers the messages and realizes it must be these scumbags. However, Karen steps in front of him and tells them to stop, explaining he just got out of the hospital. The girl's hand is visibly shaking as she clutches her bag strap. Kyosuke notices this as he sizes up the situation. Waving his hand as he steps forward, he thanks her for the help, but assures her he'll be fine. One of the guys scoffs, telling him not to act tough in front of a girl, calling him just a worthless, attributeless nobody. The group's leader then threatens him, saying he'll remind him that he's a useless punk who can't even use magic. In response, Kyosuke states that they're the ones who need to be reminded of their place. In his thoughts, he promises the body's former owner to rest easy, because he will make his name known throughout the world as the strongest of all adventurers. Declaring out loud that he's a man of his word, the aggressor's expression twists with rage. Furious, one of the guys asks what nonsense he's spouting as he prepares a fire attack. Immediately, Karen exclaims that he can't, as using magic outside of dungeons is against school rules. The blonde guy, however, tells her to shut up, yelling that the talentless, attributeless one is in the wrong for daring to challenge him. With that, he hurls the fireball at Kyosuke and yells for him to take the hit. The boy watches the magic approach without any reaction. Then, he concentrates the same fire energy in his hand and counters the spell, but with an even larger sphere of power. The two fire attacks then collide in mid-air. The collision of the spells creates a massive explosion in the courtyard. Faced with this, the other two guys wonder if that wasn't the same magic, questioning since when he'd been able to use it. In the middle of the smoke, the group's leader can only ask, "What?" Kyosuke then glares at him and asks disdainfully if that's all he's got. Unable to react, the guy just curses the situation. In desperation, the bully yells at his friends not to just stand there and to finish him off. With that, the two agree and launch their water and wind attacks, asking what he thinks of that. However, Kyosuke also summons water and wind magic. In doing so, he completely nullifies the two attacks coming at him. The group is in disbelief, wondering how many magical attributes he can use, as they've never heard of anything like it. With a cold voice, Kyosuke then asks if they are satisfied. Then, he raises his finger and declares that now it's his turn. As a huge fire aura forms around him, he tells them not to worry, as he won't kill them at least. The aggressors scream in terror, with one of them trying to call for help in vain. Suddenly, he grabs the leader by the shoulder and asks what they did when the old Kyosuke asked for help. Without waiting, he continues, saying that he doesn't actually need to hear their answer. With that, he squeezes the guy's face hard. As he lifts him into the air, he states that worms like him always say the same things anyway. He then declares, that's why, no matter what the guy says, he won't stop his flaming fist from hitting him square on. Immediately after, he delivers a powerful punch to the aggressor's face. The blow hits him with full force, knocking the leader out instantly. The impact of the punch sends all three aggressors flying, making them crash hard onto the ground. With that, the group's leader falls sprawled out and smoking on the asphalt, completely defeated. As she watches the scene, Karen can only murmur his name, Asahi Kyosuke. Staring at the fallen aggressors, he declares that from now on, no one will ever look down on him again. With a determined smile, he concludes that together they will walk the path to becoming the strongest adventurer. As they walk away, the attackers start shouting apologies. At the same time, the group's leader mutters that he's completely changed since getting out of the hospital. With a look of disdain, Kyosuke remarks that the guy wasn't much of a big deal after all. As he and Karen walk down the hall, all the other students watch them in silence. The news of the confrontation seems to have spread, drawing stares wherever he goes. Seeing this, he wonders if he stood out too much. Suddenly, a hand lands on his shoulder, and a voice asks for a moment. It asks if he's really Asahi Kyosuke. Not recognizing the guy, he hears the stranger ask if he has a moment to talk. Noticing the guy seems to be an upperclassman, Kyosuke thinks it's a hassle and considers just ignoring him. He then tries to excuse himself, saying class is about to start. However, the upperclassman cuts him off and says that, on second thought, he hasn't given his name yet. With an imposing stance, he introduces himself as Yoichi Tsudai, the leader of the group, biting the cat. Confused, Karin just repeats the group's name as a question. Biting the cat? In that instant, Kyosuke remembers the name, the clan that director Iwako created. As he tries to head to class, Tsudai calls him again to ask one more time. With a smile, the upperclassman insists, "You can spare me a little of your time, can't you?" Kyosuke stops and turns his head, considering the offer. He then turns back to the guy and says that if that's the case, it seems he has no choice. Tsudai then gets straight to the point and asks if he was the one who defeated the adventurers found in the rank D dungeon last night. Pretending not to understand, Kyosuke just asks what he's talking about. However, he wonders how the guy found out, since that information was supposed to be hidden. The upperclassman explains he was informed that a student entered the dungeon, so he decided to investigate. He then reveals that inside the dungeon, he found infamous criminals known for hunting newbies. Furthermore, Tsudai adds that he was using multi-attribute magic that morning. Kyosuke then realizes this means the guy doesn't know the specifics of his magic. Losing patience, the upperclassman demands that he just spit it out and confirm if he defeated them. In response, Kyosuke claims that since he was suddenly attacked that morning, he doesn't remember what happened very well. Showing his ID, he concludes that he's just a level 1, so there's no way he could do something like that. Tsudai looks at the ID he's being shown. He then reads that it says level 1 and void attribute. Annoyed, he grumbles that this nobody dares to waste his time. With that, he turns and apologizes for calling him over. Before leaving, the upperclassman warns him not to act suspiciously, as it's a pain to have extra work. Kyosuke watches the guy walk away down the hall. Then, he starts thinking about that guy, Tsudai. With a smile, Kyosuke realizes he can use the upperclassman to get closer to Iwako without raising suspicion. He then wonders if there's a way to make him his pawn, but soon gets a new idea. With that, he concludes that this is the perfect time to test that magic. In another room, Tsudai finishes his report on what happened in the rank D dungeon the previous night. Sitting in his chair, Director Iwako says it's not like him to mess things up like that. The director then scolds him, saying he warned him to be careful about who he uses. Tsudai bows in a sincere apology and promises he will try to calm the situation down immediately. Unfazed, Iwako simply replies with a naturally. The director then warns him that if it's discovered he's involved in hunting newbies, he'll be criticized as well. Suddenly, Iwako grabs him forcefully by the chin. He then threatens him, saying not to forget that if anything goes wrong, even he can be discarded in the blink of an eye. To this, Tsudai replies that he understands the director's message. In his thoughts, he curses the situation, wondering why he has to deal with this, and that if he'd known how it would be, he would have extorted much more money from those bastards to silence them, revealing he's the mastermind behind it. Returning to the matter at hand, the director says that, having said that, there's one thing he still doesn't understand. Not understanding, Tsudai asks what that would be. The director then explains that, according to the report, the student in question is at least a third year. However, he shows that there's no record of any third-year student entering a dungeon last night. With that, he puts the device aside and begins his conclusion. He concludes that the guys must have been defeated by a monster while hunting newbies, and that Tsudai is lying to cover it up. To him, that's a more realistic conclusion than thinking one of his own students defeated the newbie hunters alone. With nothing to say, Tsudai just asks if that's really it. Indeed, the director confirms. He then concludes, unless something extremely unusual happened. The word unusual reminds Tsudai of Kyosuke's ID with the void attribute. At this, he turns to Iwako and asks if it's possible that a unique attribute was involved in the case. The director considers the idea and replies that a unique attribute is indeed a plausible possibility. A smile forms on Tsudai's face. Right after, he offers to handle the matter personally for the director. With a new plan in mind, he promises he will quickly resolve this problem. Inside a dark corridor, torches flicker with the approaching commotion. There, a group of students cast coordinated spells against an unknown threat. One of the students then screams that the monster broke through their defense and came towards them. With that, the creature charges furiously, forcing everyone to scatter to survive. In the midst of the chaos, Tsudai conjures a spell to contain the attack, while scolding the class not to break the battle formation under any circumstances. The creature then collapses to the ground as he declares that he has cleared all the monsters in the area. Immediately, the other students comment on how amazing he is for being chosen by Director Iwako. His followers congratulate him with a salute, praising the good work he did. As soon as he's done, he announces he'll leave the rest to them and prepares to leave. Alone, he reveals that it's now time to do what he really came here to do. He then pulls out a chained artifact and identifies it only as chains. He soon activates the item and commands it to immediately reveal the location of Asai Kyosuke. Tsudai then concludes, just as he imagined, that the target is far from the other students. Even without knowing what the other plans, he considers the current situation better for himself. This way, no one would think Kyosuke's death was anything more than an unfortunate accident. He'll then say that he found him by chance, since these things are common occurrences in dungeons. He then begins to recall the events, first mentioning the rookie hunter incident. He continues, stating that ever since the boy got out of the hospital, he has brought nothing but trouble. Furthermore, he admits he's really curious about what those guys were talking about earlier. In a flashback, Tsudai was listening to the report, questioning if what the students told him was really true. The group begs him to believe them, explaining that the no attribute attacked them using the exact same magic as them. One of them adds that the bastard also created a huge flame like they had never seen before. Even so, he states that there's no way he can believe a story like that. With that, he stands up and says he has already asked everything he needed to know. As soon as one of the students starts to speak, Tsudai cuts him off sharply. He then orders his men to re-educate them, as he has no use for weaklings who lose to incompetence. As he's dragged away, one of the young men screams desperately, saying that wasn't what Tsudai had promised. While his men restrain the other boy, he states that Kyosuke has already ceased to be human. Following the energy trail, Tsudai reflects that the fear he saw in the students wasn't normal. He remembers that to test him, he had him participate in his clan's special class, but the boy only showed powerful illusions. Passing by the defeated monsters, he supposes he must have used some magical item or something of the sort. Tsudai is sure he also dealt with the rookie hunters using some dishonest method. Upon finding the corpse of another monster, he wonders if that was also the work of Asai Kyosuke. Seeing that the creature was killed with a single fire-based blow, he admits that what the boys said wasn't a complete lie. Still, Tsudai scoffs at the feat, stating that such power isn't a big deal. He then reflects that even Iwako, the pentagram failure, could do the same thing. He admits that, for now, he has no choice but to obey him, but one day he will surpass him. Then, he will take Iwako's place as a pentagram and rule the world. With his grand plan in mind, a malicious smile forms on his face. To achieve his goal, he knows he can't let anyone discover his connection with the rookie hunters. As for Asai Kyosuke, who will likely cause more trouble, he will ensure a small accident happens to him. The artifact then points to a nearby corner, indicating the boy must be right there. Peeking around, he prepares himself, and questions what Kyosuke could be doing in a place like that. In the next instant, his eyes widen at what he sees. On the other side, Kyosuke greets him from atop a pile of monsters, saying he's very late and that he was getting tired of waiting. Completely surprised, he questions how the boy managed to notice his presence, which should have been completely hidden. Kyosuke then taunts him, asking if that's exactly what he's thinking right now, calling him by name. Tsudai can't believe it, and wonders if Kyosuke actually read his thoughts. Taking a step back, he finally asks what the hell Kyosuke really is. The boy replies that he heard Iwako chose him, but that he's not as impressive as he imagined. He then adds that the way he hunts rookies to extort money is exactly how the coward Iwako would do it. Completely exposed, Tsudai demands to know how he has this information. Kyosuke then stands up and says it seems he really enjoys tormenting others. However, he states that Tsudai has never understood what it's like to be the hunted. With that, he raises his fist and declares he will teach him that feeling right now. To finish, he reveals that with his magic, he will make the other dance for him. Tsudai faces Kyosuke, who has his hands in his pockets, stating that he is too dangerous. And as he activates the flames on his sword, he says that for the sake of his ambition, he will have to defeat him at any cost. He then charges forward, but Kyosuke easily dodges the strike. With a flame in his hand, the challenger taunts him, asking if that is his true strength. He then launches a wave of fire towards his opponent. Tsudai blocks the attack with his sword, questioning if Kyosuke thinks he can win with that level of skill. But it was just a distraction, and without faltering, the boy prepares a new spell of a different attribute. Soon, the energy magic hits him, but is defended by the sword, launching him backward from the impact. With the force of the blow, the attacker is thrown violently against the corridor wall. Before he can react, he is surprised by magic that emerges from the debris of the previous attack on the ground. Still, he manages to escape this one too, cutting the stone spikes to pieces. Tsudai then realizes, in disbelief, that Kyosuke can really use multi-attribute magic. As he fights, he demands to know what the problem is with his void magic. The instant his opponent appears behind him, he barely manages to react but defends himself successfully. Then, Tsudai yells that all Kyosuke does is get in the way of his plans. With the clash of swords pushing them back, they manage to create some distance for a moment. Kyosuke then questions him with disdain, asking what plans he is talking about. The other replies that that's right and declares that one day he will become someone who surpasses Iwako. Then, he will take his place and become a pentagram saint. Kyosuke then asks why Iwako specifically, since there are other pentagram saints. With a smile, Tsudai begins to explain the reason for his plans. That it's because Iwako is a failure who abandoned the pentagram in the past. He explains that if he manages to become a saint, it will give him the right to rule the world, so it makes sense to target the weakest of them all. Kyosuke closes his eyes for a moment, showing aversion. Tsudai calls him despicable, before asking what that was about. The young man then admits he was worried the other might have gotten to Iwako first. However, he adds that if his ambition was so pathetic, there was no reason to worry. Those words leave Tsudai completely speechless. With a roar of fury, he tells Kyosuke to shut up and lunges for a new attack. As their swords cross, he questions what's wrong with wanting power, money, and women. He continues, stating that he wants the power to step on others without anyone being able to say anything about it. With their blades locked, he screams that this is the power he truly desires. He explains that if he can become become a pentagram saint, he can do whatever he wants. Once he obtains that position, he will have the chance to discover the saintess's weakness and make her his. Kyosuke interrupts him, saying his words aren't even worth listening to. He then declares it's time to end this and launches a decisive attack. Desperate, he screams that it's impossible as he sees his sword shatter into pieces. Kyosuke then reveals that, thanks to the useless talk, he was able to finish preparing his magic. Terrified, his opponent begs him not to come closer, screaming for him to stay away. Even so, Kyosuke ignores the plea and says it's now time to see him dance. He then casts his spell, Absolute Hypnosis, on his opponent. Under the spell's effect, Tsudai's eyes lose focus and become completely empty. In an instant, he collapses to the ground, unconscious. Still, Kyosuke reflects that this magic requires effort to break the target's spirit, but once activated, the result is certain. He then orders the other to get up immediately. As if he were a puppet, the boy begins to rise from the ground on command. In a hollow voice, he replies, "Yes, sir," and that he has already gotten up. Kyosuke then smiles, confirming his spell was a complete success. He then instructs the manipulated one to focus on completing the mission for now, as he will give new orders later. As he tries to respond in a slurred manner, Kyosuke tells him to go back to using his normal tone of voice. Immediately, his eyes blink and return to their usual appearance. With his personality restored, he turns and says he will return to lead the group. As he walks away, Kyosuke watches him in silence, ensuring the control is active. A satisfied smile forms on the manipulator's face at the success of the plan. Walking down the corridor, a shadow reveals that someone else has just arrived. Revealing herself as Asahi Karin, she asks where he has been, as she was worried. With a gentle smile, he apologizes and says he was just talking with Tsudai about something. Surprised, the girl questions him to know what the two were talking about. Kyosuke replies that they just talked about how to achieve their dreams, causing Karen to ask if he received good advice. With that, he confirms that he received great advice, assuring her that one of his dreams will definitely come true thanks to it. Excited, Karen says she hopes his dream comes true soon, to which he agrees that he hopes so too. Soon, a group of students passes through the corridor, announcing that the special class is about to end, and that all students must gather immediately. Karen then calls for him to go with her, as they can't fall behind. In his thoughts, Kyosuke reflects that he's really happy to have participated in this class, and he concludes in silence that he has finally gotten his hands on a pawn that Iwako would never suspect. Still in his office, Director Iwako asks if there's been any progress regarding the incident with the rookie hunters. In response, Tsudai confirms that, as expected, a student with a unique attribute was involved in the case. He also reveals that the student in question is Asai Kyosuke, a first year, who possesses the void attribute. With that, he reports that he is conducting the interrogation at the usual place, and that the young man has already admitted to using multi-attribute magic during the confrontation. Faced with this claim, the director asks what exactly this multi-attribute magic is. However, the interrogator just gives a subtle smile before answering, a sign of his active mind control. Still, he admits the details remain unknown, but assures him he can find out everything given enough time. Taking the opportunity, Tsudai mentions he has a suggestion, that it's been a while, and that perhaps it would be appropriate for the director himself to take over the interrogation. After some thought, Iwako agrees it's not a bad idea. The man comments that it's been a long time since he's tortured anyone, and promises a reward for the trouble the student caused. So Tsudai stands up and starts to say that they should go together. However, he's interrupted when the director dismisses him, saying he'll go later, causing the other to leave alone. Once he's alone, Iwako answers the phone and introduces himself. On the other end of the line, a female voice greets him and thanks him for choosing them in the previous day's negotiation. Without hesitation, he tells her to cut the act. He then calls her by her name, Lei Ruoxi, revealing he didn't fall for the bait. The CEO of Pentagram Saints then reminds him that they are partners and share government subsidies. Leaning back in his chair, the director tries to end the conversation, claiming to be busy, but she just remarks that he's the same as always. Provocatively, Ruoxi questions what kind of important business the great academy director could possibly have. He tells her to watch what she says and reveals that he's investigating a student with the void attribute. In a mocking tone, the woman asks what a failure with such an attribute could possibly do. Even so, the director replies that despite everything, it is still a unique attribute. Because of that, he concludes that anything could happen. Hearing this, the businesswoman pauses for a moment, reflecting on the information. She then asks if he means something like Kyoichiro's time attribute magic. Irritated, Iwako demands she not speak of that man, which only makes her mock his temper. Despite this, she admits she can't blame him for his reaction. With that, the CEO recalls that the balance of power among adventurers changed completely since the awakening of that power. Then, she says goodbye and tells him she'll be in touch again later. As he ends the call, the director gives a cold goodbye. Right after, he slams his fist on the table and calls her a selfish fox. However, The director admits to himself that hearing that cursed name after so long has deeply angered him. He then decides this is the perfect moment to unleash all his anger. Thus, Iwako's silhouette walks towards a secluded warehouse. Standing before the door, he wonders exactly how he should torture the prisoner. As he touches the lock, he starts listing methods like drowning and pulling out fingernails. With a smile, he decides he will take out all the anger he couldn't take out on Kyoichiro, on the student. After using his energy on the lock, he confirms that the door has opened. With open arms, he enters the place and apologizes to Tsudai for the delay. However, upon seeing the empty torture room, he realizes no one is inside. From behind, the other man prepares to strike him with an object. The attack flies towards the director's face. At the last second, Iwako raises his arm and manages to block the blow. He then turns to his attacker and states that it seems he's been underestimated. Facing him, he asks if his arrogance comes from all the praise he's received. With his energy manifesting, he asks if the young man really thought he could defeat him, and he attacks him with energy chains while stating that this wouldn't be enough to beat him. The chains wrap around Tsudai's body, lifting him into the air upside down. The director then lands a powerful kick that sends him crashing to the ground, declaring that someone like him is no match. Walking towards the gagged traitor, he says he made the wrong choice. The man then declares that Yoichi Tsudai's foolish desires have led him to his own ruin. Suddenly, a voice from behind comments that he's still the same idiot as always. Startled by the presence, he turns and asks who's there. Kyosuke emerges from the entrance, describing someone who bows before the strong and exploits the weak, and he adds that it seems he's still as greedy and foolish as ever. Furious, Iwako yells, questioning how he dares to speak to the academy director like that. Ignoring the threat, the young man just continues his speech, that this someone has ruined himself with foolish desires. To finish, he states that this sounds like a perfect self-introduction for Iwako Hideki, the director. Not recognizing him, the man demands to know who this bastard is and asks for his student number to expel him immediately. With a smile, Kyosuke just tells him to calm down, and he finishes by saying he's finally reached this point and suggests they should now have a talk. Just the two of them. Furious, the director accuses him of mocking him while preparing a spell. From the ground, small stones levitate, pulled by the sheer intensity of his power. With this, Iwako vows to show him the vast difference in strength between them. The man then invokes an advanced earth attribute spell, a giant hand under his control. As this structure of stone and earth rushes forward like a punch, he declares that no student could possibly dodge the attack. Then, he screams for the young man to die as he throws a jab into the air. The stone fist hurtles at high speed toward Kyosuke. Immediately after, a devastating impact erupts where the blow lands, sending shrapnel flying. Laughing, the director declares victory, screaming that this is what happens when a mere student dares to challenge him. The dust cloud begins to clear from the impact site, revealing the ruined warehouse. Iwako then wonders if he went a bit too far, concluding that he'll have to find a new place to torture people. Even without knowing who he was, he decides he'll stay to watch him die. Suddenly, a voice from the dust comments that he's been a real nuisance. Confused, the director turns toward the source of the sound. Amidst the settling dust, Kyosuke's silhouette appears, completely untouched. Surprised, Iwako can barely begin to form a word. The young man then begins to walk slowly toward him. In a calm tone, he reminds the man that he had only asked for a little chat. Shocked, the director yells that it's impossible for anyone to emerge unscathed from his advanced magic, stating there's never been a student like this before. Pointing, he demands to know who the hell he is, ordering him to state his name. With a smirk, Kyosuke simply repeats the question about his identity. Then he asks if the other man doesn't truly know him already. Iwako replies that he doesn't know any bastard like him and demands he stop playing games and reveal his name. The young man then says he's deeply hurt by those words. As the image of the old Kyoichiro connects the dots in the director's mind, the young man asks if he's truly forgotten. Upon recognizing him, the man's expression changes completely, and he stammers that it can't be true. Completely terrified, he backs away, screaming in denial. He clutches his head, certain that this young man is definitely who he thinks he is. He stares at him, still in disbelief, and calls him a bastard. He then orders him to stop the pathetic act, accusing him of having seen the news report about the story. With clenched teeth, he prepares another energy attack and declares that the man, Misato Kyoichiro, is already dead. With a sigh, Kyosuke states that he's always been this way. The young man continues, saying the other only believes what's convenient and ignores what isn't. Annoyed, Iwako tells him to stop talking nonsense and threatens to attack if he gets any closer. With a slight smile, he simply comments that he understands the situation. As energy forms in his hand, he says the director let himself be swayed by the sweet words of those around him. Finally, he questions if that was the reason for the betrayal against him. Completely out of control, the man screams for the boy to shut up and launches the energy blast. However, his opponent uses the magic he had charged to defend against the attack. Completely stunned, Iwako realizes that spell, it's the same one Kyoichiro used in the past. With that, the force of the impact explodes violently where it was deflected. As he stumbles back, he claims there's no way that's possible. He then recalls that he was sure they had sealed him in the dungeon. In response, Kyosuke approaches and says that he was indeed imprisoned. The young man continues, revealing he was also thrown into the depths of despair. Unable to believe it, the director asks if he really is Misato Kyoichiro. Kyosuke simply replies that it took him long enough to realize. With a smile, he says it's been a while, and that he's glad to be remembered. Still on his knees, Director Iwako asks once more if the young man is really Kyosuke, but then he suddenly stands up. He yells not to be taken for a fool, because that would mean he died and returned to this world. Immediately, he gathers energy in his hand for a new attack. Then he declares that ghosts should stay quiet. A powerful blast of energy is then launched at the young man. However, Kyosuke manages to dodge the blow with a last-second jump. The energy grazes past him as he dodges in midair. He lands safely. However, a giant stone fist appears in the sky above, heading straight for him, but he dodges again. Seeing this, the director calls him an insolent brat. Still, he thinks he needs to gain the upper hand in the fight. He recalls that he may have been a non-combatant in his days as a golden seeker, something the other saints still mock him for. However, he clenches his fist and prepares himself. As rocks levitate around him, he shouts that it doesn't mean he's weak. The man then reveals this is the secret technique he spent 20 years creating. With that, he unleashes his powerful dual magic of wind and earth. He then yells at the young man to take his attack. A storm of rock and wind rushes forward at high speed. Soon, multiple stone projectiles strike the area around him. The attack finally explodes in a devastating impact. Panting, he asks what he thought of that, stating it's his strongest magic. The director then watches the cloud of dust that has risen. After a moment, he realizes Kyosuke isn't counterattacking. He then lets out a low laugh to himself. Then, he celebrates, shouting that he finally did it. He boasts, claiming he has defeated that bastard Misato Kyoichiro. In a mocking tone, he says the time attribute is now a thing of the past. To finish, he asks how many years ago that was, answering that it was 20 damn years. He declares that the person the young man knew is not who he is now, as he recalls his shameful past of hiding. With a loud laugh, he yells that the young man shouldn't have underestimated him. He then explains that since 20 years have passed, his level has risen, and it's only natural that he's grown stronger. Then, he lets out a sigh of relief. He thinks he's finally defeated him, and that he won't let others act superior anymore. With a shout, he declares that he is the true strongest among the pentagram saints. Suddenly, a voice from the dust interrupts him, asking if he's done. As the dust settles, Kyosuke appears completely unscathed, making the other man stammer in shock. Pointing at him, the director questions how it's possible he survived so many attacks. The young man simply comments that he has become capable of using powerful magic, as expected of a hero of this era. An aura then begins to form around his body. With a smile, he says he can now finally unleash his anger without holding back. Completely terrified, Iwako realizes this man is a monster. Desperate, Iwako screams that he won't let him get in his way again after working so hard to get where he is. The director then launches his giant stone hand attack once more. The rock fist lunges forward to crush Kyosuke. As the blow hits, he believes he's finally got him. From within the debris, the young man's calm voice can be heard. Then a torrent of water bursts from the structure, as he comments that the other is as noisy as ever. The liquid magic completely dissolves the earth attack, turning it into mud. Standing on the rubble, the young man asks if he really thinks that's enough to defeat him. Terrified, the man stammers, begging him not to come closer. He then desperately fires another energy blast, screaming for him to stay away. However, Kyosuke deflects the attack with a simple wave of his hand. The energy is redirected into a vortex. As a result, Iwako himself is caught in the counterattack, taking a direct hit. Kyosuke approaches the fallen enemy, his fist engulfed in flames, watching the defeated man. Completely defeated, the director begs for forgiveness. Lying on the ground, he apologizes for what happened 20 years ago. He keeps begging, but the young man remains silent. Despite his desperation, the man thinks that the other was always a kind fool. He believes he'll surely be forgiven if he just begs. However, Kyosuke tells him to shut up, stating that's exactly how he was tricked in the past. He then asks if he really thinks he'd let that happen a second time. Desperate, Iwako tries to appeal to their past, reminding him they used to be friends. In response, the young man states that he has no right to say those words, not after turning him into a demon of vengeance. Without hesitation, he lands a flaming punch right in the fallen man's face. He then unleashes a brutal sequence of blows imbued with fire and ice magic. The impact sends the director flying backward, severely injured. As he loses consciousness, all he can think is that he should have never messed with that man, before being completely engulfed by an explosion from the final blow that slams him against a tree. Standing before the frozen body, Kyosuke says he should be grateful he's still alive, as there's still something he needs to ask. Looking at the unconscious enemy, he asks if he can still hear him. Still dazed on the floor, Iwako wakes up, confused about where he is. Kyosuke greets him, saying he's finally awake. Immediately, the director scrambles back in a panic. He then begs for his life. The young man reassures him, stating he has no intention of killing him. However, he pauses before continuing. He then pressures him, saying he'll have to answer a few questions. With that, he prepares to ask the first one. Showing the phone he found, He demands to know about a woman named Lei Ruoxi. The man tries to snatch the phone back, yelling that the device is his. Kyosuke ignores him and points out that, according to the call history, the woman contacted him that very day. He then sharply questions him about the content of their conversation. With no way out, the director reveals she's coming to Japan in 3 days, and that they discussed it. The young man smiles upon hearing this, saying he understands. He recalls the past, leaving an unfinished thought about what he'll do to her within that time frame. He then states that he's already decided his next move. Handing back the phone, he instructs the other man to act normally around Lei Ruoxi for now. However, he forbids him from revealing anything about his identity. He then reveals that he cast a spell on the director's heart while he was unconscious. So, if he dares to tell the truth, an explosion of energy will hit him head-on. The man reacts, startled by the display of power. As he walks away, Kyosuke reminds him to keep his promise. In truth, he reveals he didn't use any magic like that at all. But considering Iwako's cowardly personality, a simple bluff would be more than enough. He decides then not to use absolute hypnosis. He wants his enemy to suffer in despair while remaining fully conscious. 3 days later, the scene shifts to the inside of an airplane. Inside, Lei Ruoxi calmly gazes out the window. Soon, one of her subordinates informs her they are about to arrive. Suddenly, the flight attendant begins to announce that the plane is about to land. Her speech is cut short by a scream echoing through the cabin. A masked man appears, announcing that the plane is being hijacked. He then orders all passengers to get on the floor immediately. Lei stands up to confront the intruders. The terrorist threatens her, telling her not to disobey his orders. However, he's stunned by the speed with which she appears before him. She then strikes him with a blow combined with a discharge of power. The target can barely react to the surprise attack. Quickly, the woman neutralizes both hijackers using her powers. The other passengers watch the scene completely stunned. One of them then recognizes her as a member of the Pentagram Saints, exclaiming that she saved them all. After landing, Lei and her team disembark onto the runway as the criminals are detained. An airline representative approaches and profusely thanks Miss Lei. With a smile, she replies that she's glad she was on the plane, as it prevented the company's reputation from being tarnished. One of her men then points out that the hijacker's weapon was special, as it wasn't caught by the detector. Lei then comments that recently, many groups have been using equipment made from dungeon materials, and for that reason, she states she had to give her team equipment so they could defend themselves. She then suggests the airline should acquire defensive equipment like the kind her team carries. The representative immediately agrees and bows, promising to arrange everything. As soon as he walks away, the woman makes a call and orders the hijackers to be released. Her subordinate comments that the plan went well, and she replies that it was quite amusing. After all, planting those hijackers helped her close the deal she wanted. The man then points to the crowd, commenting that it was also great publicity. The crowd then chants Lei Ruoxi's name, hailing her as a great hero. With a smile, she simply waves to her new fans. A short time later, they arrive by car at a large school building. As she gets out, Lei announces it's time to take care of the business that brought her to Japan. The scene cuts to the director's office, where Iwako waits with a bruised face. He just stares silently out his office window. The visitor enters the room with a smile, excusing the intrusion. She then asks if there has been any progress in the investigation of the student with the void attribute. The man lies, saying it was just a false alarm, and that the boy was nothing but a useless failure. She seems to agree, commenting that even a unique attribute is nothing special in the end. Aware that the spell will activate if he says the wrong thing, he knows he just needs to answer normally. With that, his partner says she'll get straight to the matter she really wanted to discuss. Lei then mentions the new drug they're developing and suggests they choose the next test subject. She then comments that the director has made good use of the academy's system. From a distance, Kyosuke overhears the conversation, hearing the suggestion to start with the student list. Hearing this, he reacts with contempt, stating their attitude is despicable. He then declares that the next person to experience despair will be her, Lei Ruoxi. The TV news reports that Lei Ruoxi of the Pentagram Saints arrived in Japan yesterday. The reporter continues, saying she's being praised for handling the kidnappers. At that moment, Kyosuke recognizes her as one of the people who betrayed him 20 years ago. He remembers that she produces unique weapons with materials from dungeons and has made a fortune from it. However, from his conversation with Iwako, the young man concludes that she's using the school for illegal purposes. With that, he prepares to leave the house. With a smile, he reflects that beneath her heroic facade, she takes advantage of others. Determined, he tells himself he can't let this situation continue. As he walks down the hall, he wonders about the best way to proceed. Seeing the news on his phone, he recalls that security at the academy was already tight when he arrived. Suddenly, Karen calls his name, interrupting his plan to investigate the situation. With a smile, the girl greets him and wishes him a good morning. As she gets closer, she notices the article about Lei, and he confirms he was just taking a look. Then, Karen excitedly comments that the woman is incredible for having faced all the kidnappers the day before. She then mentions that the Great Serpent of Changshan is also very popular, prompting Kyosuke to ask what Changshan is. She explains that Changshan is the clan Lei created, and it's made up of many powerful members. At that instant, he deduces that the men in black suits guarding Lei were probably from that clan. As they they walk, Karen asks about his future plans, since many students plan to join the army. However, he cuts himself off as a sudden idea strikes him. He immediately realizes that if he can use that clan to his advantage, he might be able to get closer to Lei. Determined, he changes his mind about what he was going to do. With a smile, he thanks his friend, saying that thanks to her, he's finally figured out what to do. He then runs down the hall, leaving the girl behind. Not understanding his reaction, Karen just replies confused, "You're welcome?" Back in his office, Iwako's phone suddenly rings, startling him. Apprehensively, the director answers the call and identifies himself. On the other end of the line, Kyosuke greets him and says he needs a favor. As soon as the man asks what he wants, the young man starts giving an order about what to do if Lei contacts him. The scene then shifts to a laboratory, where several researchers gather around a tied-up man. In the center of the room, the subject groans breathlessly while being examined by 3 assistants. Finally, a person's shadow approaches the man lying on the lab floor. Then, Lei Ruoxi appears and asks how the test subject is feeling. The man begs her to stop injecting the drug, screaming that he'll die if this continues. Without a word, the woman kicks him hard in the face, forcing him to the ground. She then states that she doesn't listen to the opinions of lab rats. She advises him not to be so pessimistic about the situation. She then explains that if he's compatible with the drug, he'll become even stronger. With a gesture, she orders the procedure to continue. The man panics and begs them to wait as he sees the syringe approaching. One of the assistants prepares the injection. The test subject struggles as the needle pierces his body. He immediately screams in pain from the substance's effect. A researcher holds him firmly to the ground, while the observer watches the result from a distance. After the seizure, the subject faints and starts drooling on the floor. She then scoffs that the experiment only resulted in the loss of speech, adding that the drug doesn't work without magical ability. As the elevator is called, one of the subordinates states that they still need more data. He also comments that they will need more test subjects soon, and the woman agrees. With that, she decides that, as a disguise, they will make it look like a recruitment for the Great Serpent of Changshan. She then calls Iwako and brings up the subject of the test subjects they had discussed before. Inside the elevator, she specifies that she needs people skilled in magic, and asks him to choose some students from the academy. On the other end of the line, the director listens to the proposal in silence. Faced with the request, Iwako suggests that, in that case, they could do things differently. He then proposes that they hold a selection at the academy itself to find the most skilled students. Surprised by the idea, the woman congratulates him sarcastically, saying that he even has good ideas from time to time. As she exits the elevator, she ends the call, informing him that she will send the event details soon. As soon as the call ends, the director slams the phone down on his desk. He then reveals that he did exactly what Kyosuke had asked him to do. A short time later, a man walks onto the auditorium stage and announces he has a statement for the students. He reveals that the Great Serpent of Changshan clan has decided to hold a selection exam to find new recruits. Immediately, the students react with enthusiasm, realizing this is their chance to join the popular clan. In the midst of the crowd, Kyosuke listens to the recruitment announcement in silence. With this, he realizes that the path to get closer to Lei has finally opened. On the academy grounds, the examiner thanks the students for attending the selection exam for the Great Serpent of Changshan. Then, the man announces he will explain how the exam will work. Aware that he needs to pass this exam to join the clan and get closer to Lei, Kyosuke pays close attention. The young man reflects that, unlike when he approached Iwako, this time his strategy will be the opposite. To catch the attention of Yang Xinyu, Lei's right-hand man, and the other examiners, he decides he will display all his power without holding back. Suddenly, a voice calls his name, pulling him from his thoughts. Karen approaches and asks if he's also taking the exam, and the boy confirms. Even though he doesn't want her involved, he doesn't stop her from participating. At this, the girl admits she knows she doesn't belong in this place. However, she states she has her own reasons for wanting to join the clan. Excited, she suggests they both do their best so they can pass together, and he agrees. With that, he reinforces to himself that he must pass no matter what. Soon, an instructor announces they will begin the test to measure everyone's magical power. He then presents a device that will visualize the magical power of whoever touches it. With that, he informs them that they will measure everyone's magical power, and asks them to come up one by one. Soon, the first student touches the device to release their energy. The examiner jots down the result on his clipboard, without showing any reaction. Next, the instructor announces that the next participant is Asai Kyosuke. Upon presenting himself, the young man tells the man he is at his service. The student's ID card shows his name is Asai Kyosuke, and his attribute is Void. Reading that he is level 30, the evaluator concludes he shouldn't expect much from the boy. With that, Kyosuke approaches and places his hand on the measurement device. In the next instant, a wave of energy erupts from the device, revealing immense power like a cosmic explosion of brilliant sparks. The instructor can barely react, shielding his face from the light. As the others back away, Karen exclaims that this is insane. The examiner remains stunned, unable to move at the sight. Kyosuke then asks if that was enough, and the man agrees, still dazed. Without hesitation, the evaluator writes an S grade next to Asai Kyosuke's name. Right after, the magic skills test begins with a new demonstration. The examiner questions if the boy can only create a mound of earth, since having a lot of magical power isn't enough. With a smile, Kyosuke prepares to show what he's capable of. He then manipulates several elements at the same time for the test. The instructor watches the scene, unable to believe what he's seeing. The young man then demonstrates his mastery over all basic attributes simultaneously. One of the superiors asks in disbelief if he's using all the basic attributes at the same time. With this, the young man demonstrates the power of a void attribute that everyone despises. Karin congratulates him, exclaiming that was incredible. He thanks her and encourages her to do her best on her test as well. Soon, it's the girl's turn, and she gets into position for her demonstration. She concentrates and releases her magical power. Her energy causes the dead flowers in the pots to come back to life. In the end, a flower bed blooms before everyone. Some students mock her ability, questioning if reviving flowers is all she can do. Kyosuke, however, recognizes it as a light attribute magic, a very rare power. The young man concludes that, although rare, her ability will be difficult to evaluate, but that it's better for her not to get involved in this. Then, Karin walks away in silence as one of the examiners watches her. Soon after, the man jots down on a card that Asahi Karin is worth testing as a guinea pig. Finally, the examiner announces they will conduct one-on-one duels. He then introduces the group of fighters who will be the students' opponents. Seeing the students' surprise, the evaluator explains that the assessment won't be based on victory or defeat, but on how they fight. However, he believes that, either way, there's no way a student can beat one of them. With a laugh, one of the opponents approaches and asks if Kyosuke is the student who caused a commotion during the exam. He continues, saying that although the boy got good results, he'll show him that it doesn't matter in a real fight. With a smile, Kyosuke replies yes, and that he hopes to learn a lot from him. At this, the opponent declares he'll end the fight in a single blow. Right after, the man concentrates his energy and launches an earth attack. The sphere of rock rushes toward his adversary in several pieces. However, the young man easily stops the attack and even returns it to his enemy. The fighter can't believe it, questioning how his magic was destroyed in a single blow. Immediately after, he realizes his opponent has simply vanished from in front of him. The next instant, Kyosuke appears behind him, subduing him with an ice dagger poised at his neck, ready for the kill. Ironically, the young man asks if creating an opening with magic is what he calls a real fight, saying he learned a lot. Unable to hide his surprise, the examiner announces Asai Kyosuke as the winner of the duel. The other students watch in disbelief, unable to believe he defeated a member of the Great Serpent of Changshan. At this, Yang Xinyu wonders who exactly this student is. Later, the man informs the leader that the exam has been completed. At this, she asks if he found any interesting test subjects, and he confirms there is a student of interest. Lei repeats the question, and her subordinate explains that the student passed the exam with an overwhelming performance. However, the man reveals that the student seems to have the void attribute. She then wonders if this could be the student Iwako was investigating. Upon hearing the news, she begins to laugh quietly to herself. With a wicked smile, she declares that it seems she's about to get her hands on a very interesting test subject. Lei's subordinate steps onto the stage and announces he will reveal the names of those who passed the selection exam. With that, he prepares to read the first name on the list. The first successful candidate announced is Asai Kyosuke. One of the students scoffs that it was obvious he would pass, since the exam was ridiculous. Kyosuke then concludes that everything went according to plan, and he can now get closer to Lei. Next, the examiner announces the name of the next person to pass, Asahi Karin. The girl answers yes, while the young man wonders why she was also selected. He hadn't imagined that having a unique attribute would be enough to pass the test. The young man deduces that the leader is using the students for some conspiracy, and that there must be a reason for choosing Karin. Unaware of any of this, she celebrates her success with a radiant smile. He watches her with a slight smile on his face. In any case, he decides he won't let them lay a single finger on her. He just needs to achieve his goal while protecting her. A few days later, the scene shifts to the Japanese branch of the Lei Company. Inside, Lei Ruoxi welcomes everyone who passed the exam. Yang Xinyu explains that today, they will conduct an aptitude check before officially integrating them into the Great Serpent of Changshan. He also reveals that the boss herself will be present shortly. With that, the man informs them she will meet them after the check and guides them through the premises. The new recruits observe the building's imposing architecture as they follow him. Kyosuke would like to go to her immediately, but he knows he can't leave Karen alone right now. At that moment, the girl comments that being in such a large building makes her nervous, and the young man agrees with her. However, she expresses her happiness at finally being able to join the Great Serpent of Changshan. He then questions her about why she wants to join the clan so badly. She reveals that her mother is in the hospital, and that the medical expenses are very high. Upon hearing her explanation, he simply replies that he understands the situation. Kyosuke realizes her motive wasn't him, but her mother, and decides he needs to protect her even more. The guide then interrupts interrupts them, announcing they have arrived at their destination in the building's basement. As they enter, they are confronted with a massive underground testing facility. He immediately deduces that this place must be the testing facility he suspected. Shortly after, Yang Xinyu gives the order for the door to be closed. As the door slams shut with a thud, the recruits react, surprised by what has happened. Kyosuke realizes they have no intention of letting anyone escape, and that the situation is serious. With that, one of the students confronts the guide, questioning the meaning of this. Immediately, Yang Xinyu orders him to shut up in a threatening tone. The other recruits back away, intimidated by the man's reaction. Calmly, the guide explains that, as he said before, they will now conduct the aptitude check. He then reveals that the test will be to check their compatibility with a new drug they are developing in secret. Yang Xinyu explains that the substance, made with ingredients from dungeons, can drastically enhance physical abilities and magical power. A student questions if that wouldn't be a good thing, while the others seem confused. At that, Kyosuke steps forward and asks if the new drug has any side effects. The man replies with a smile that it would be quicker to simply show them. On the monitor, a recording of a test subject begs them to wait, but his words are cut short. The new recruits watch in horror at the sight of the man drooling on the floor. Amid the screams, the guide explains that what they just saw was a person incompatible with the drug, asking if that answers the question. One of the recruits then yells, outraged, that they will never agree to take something like that. In response, two of the students launch their own fire and water attacks. With that, they demand to be let out of there immediately. Soon after, Kyosuke warns Karin not to leave his side. Unfazed, Yang Xinyu prepares his counterattack. He then unleashes a flurry of punches that strike both students. With the impact, both are completely defeated. Looking at the fallen bodies, the man laments that the number of samples has decreased. With a calm expression, he suggests they start with the woman nearby. He then remembers she is the student with the light attribute, saying he is looking forward to the experiment's results. With the syringe in hand, he begins to walk toward Karin. However, Kyosuke positions himself in front of the girl, blocking the way. When asked what he's doing, the young man replies that he's keeping types like him away from her. At this, one of the other recruits orders his men to restrain him. Immediately, one of the henchmen advances to attack him, but Kyosuke takes him down with a single energy-charged blow. The leader of the henchmen reacts in shock, not understanding what just happened. With his eyes glowing and sparks of his power emanating, he prepares to attack the remaining men. In the blink of an eye, the young man lunges forward and takes them all down in a single rush. With that, he stops before the last enemy fallen on the ground. Yang Xinyu can hardly believe it, questioning how he defeated so many people with just one blow. Kyosuke then glares at him and warns that he's next. Cornered, Yang is clearly intimidated by the student's power. Desperate, the man realizes that since things have come to this, his only way out is to try and capture the woman, causing Karin to scream in terror at his advance. Kyosuke grabs his hand and warns him, saying he already told him not to get near her. Yang pulls his arm back and retreats. He is outraged by the boy. A normal student shouldn't be capable of this. Then, Kyosuke, with a look of pure hatred, tells him to get ready. At this, Yang curses the situation. Kyosuke then tells her to stay back, while Asahi thanks him for the protection. As she watches him, she thinks about how incredible he looks in that moment. She then realizes she couldn't follow any of the moves he had made before. Yang admits he knew the boy had gotten stronger, but he never imagined it would be to this extent. Even so, he warns him not to get too cocky about his own strength. Kyosuke then cuts him off, saying he needs to ask him a question. He then states that the Academy's students are being used as guinea pigs. He demands to know the exact reason behind it. With a smirk, the man stares at him in silence for a moment. He replies that it's very simple, as those who follow Miss Lei can receive her blessings. He explains that once the drug's development is complete, she will obtain even greater strength. Kyosuke confronts him, asking if he believes that conducting inhuman experiments is acceptable for that reason. Finally, Yang states that they just use what's available, and that there's nothing more to be said. Furthermore, he declares that he considers it an honor for the students to serve as their guinea pigs. A memory of Asahi flashes through Kyosuke's mind. He remembers her talking about her mother in the hospital and the high medical bills. He also remembers her saying how happy she was to join the Great Serpent of Changshan. Back in the present, he clenches his fists at the memory, filled with rage. Yang then points to the girl to begin a speech, but Kyosuke cuts him off, screaming for him to shut up. In that instant, his aura begins to glow like it did during the evaluation, forcing the other man to cover his eyes. Kyosuke then asks who he thinks he is, calling him scum for trampling on others without understanding Asahi's feelings. Watching him, the girl just calls out his name in a quiet voice. At this, Yang wonders what this incredible pressure is, and if he's really just a student. Right after, he gives a smirk. The man comments that he would normally tell him to know his place, but he doesn't dislike the courage he's shown. With that, he invites him to also serve under Miss Lei's command. He adds that if he handed over the girl, he could even become an executive, as Miss Lei would be very pleased. Kyosuke tells him to shut up again, stating that he could never forgive people like him. While adjusting his tie, Yang warns him that he'll regret this. Immediately after, an aura of energy explodes from his body, kicking up shards from the floor around him. His eyes glow an intense yellow with the released power. Observing the scene, Kyosuke identifies the technique as body-strengthening magic. Yang confirms, explaining that, combined with his martial arts, it's his undefeated skill. He then challenges him to combat as he moves forward. Yang then lunges forward, screaming as he attacks. Kyosuke dodges at the last second, and the punch shatters the floor where he was standing. Asahi is stunned by the power shown in that attack. The man turns and comments that it seems the other guy managed to dodge. Kyosuke notes that the strengthening magic is indeed powerful and decides what to do next. As he charges forward again, Yang shouts for him not to run from the next blow. Standing still, the young man concentrates on transforming his energy into an image. Seeing him standing there, his opponent yells, asking what the hell he's doing and if he's already given up. He rushes in with a final punch, screaming for Kyosuke to die. At the last second, the void magic is activated. With that, the attack is stopped with just one hand. Yang stares at him in disbelief, muttering that it's impossible. He wonders if it's the same power as his, but realizes it's actually even stronger. Kyosuke then says it seems he can now use body-strengthening magic, and thanks him for it. He then explains that it was thanks to Yang himself that he became able to imagine this technique. Then, a powerful punch lands directly in the man's stomach. The force of the blow hurls him violently backward, sending him through the room and crashing into the wall. Lying on the floor, he can't believe what just happened. As the other approaches, Yang wonders who he really is. The young man just watches him in silence for a moment. Then, he turns to Asahi and asks if she's okay, and the girl thanks him. He then states he's going to open a path for everyone to get out of there. One of the students then asks him what he's going to do, wondering where he will go. Then, Kyosuke opens a path through the wall with a single blow, answering that he has something he needs to do. Elsewhere in the building, Lei Ruoxi is informed by phone that Mr. Yang has been defeated and the students have escaped. Suddenly, she hears a noise and asks what that was. The person on the other end of the line tries to warn her that an incredibly strong man is coming up, but the call is cut off. Confused, the woman wonders what the hell happened. At that moment, Kyosuke appears at her office door and greets her. She immediately confronts him, demanding to know who he is and why he's come here. He replies that it's for a simple reason. Finally, Kyosuke reveals that he came to repay what she did 20 years ago. Watching him approach, Lei Ruoxi asks what he's talking about, mentioning a 20-year-old debt. Then he says she looks confused and offers to explain everything in detail. At that moment, the young man begins, recalling that ever since the SSS rank dungeon, the Pentagram Saints have been hailed as heroes. Right after, he states that on that day, a certain man's conspiracy was thwarted. She cuts him off, asking what a student like him is talking about and if he's trying to give her a history lesson. Still, the young man continues, saying that now the Pentagram Saints are leaders in every field, praised as heroes who defeated evil. The woman then tries to question what exactly he's insinuating. However, he interrupts her, stating that even so, that is far from the truth. Surprised, she asks what he said, as she notices the young man's aura has suddenly changed. Without hesitation, he accuses her of using her own comrades as sacrifices to reap the rewards and build her legacy. He then declares that, even now, she tramples on the will of those who once stood by her side and asks if he's wrong. At this, she lets out a mocking laugh. Lei Ruoxi comments that she was wondering what he was talking about and asks if he believes in those conspiracy theories. He replies that it's not just a conspiracy and that he knows exactly what she did. Finally, the young man states that she pushed her own comrades into the gate. The sudden accusation leaves her paralyzed for a moment. Right after, she wonders why some random student would know about that. The young man then asks if she still hasn't figured out who he really is. He then reveals his true identity as Misato Kyoichiro. The revelation leaves her completely speechless. She screams that it's impossible, but he confirms that it did indeed happen. In a firm tone, he recalls that he used the same power that made her call him a monster, a magic that only a level 100 could use. Stumbling backward, she questions if he's really there. Despite her doubt, he states that he also knows what the King Company has been doing in secret. The young man warns her that if he brings everything to light, her reputation will be ruined, making her scream at him not to mess with her. He then returns the threat, saying those should be his words. With that, he states that for what happened 20 years ago, and for trampling on the hopes of a girl who gave her all, he concludes by saying he will never forgive her for it. In response, Lei Ruoxi just scoffs. She warns him not to underestimate her, reminding him that he's no longer in Misato's body. As she grabs her weapon, a spear from the wall behind her, the woman warns him that since he dared to appear before her, immediately after, she unleashes a wave of energy and yells that she'll make him regret it. With that, the attack surges forward, destroying everything in its path. The energy leaves a trail of destruction on the office floor. Despite the destruction, the young man remains standing, unscathed. With a laugh, she asks what he thought and reveals that this is the power of the weapon developed by the King Company. She then explains that the weapon is forged with dungeon materials far stronger than any metal. As she leaps to attack, she yells that she'll show him just how sharp the weapon really is. Soon, a series of rapid strikes is launched, but Kyosuke manages to dodge them all. With a grunt, the woman comments that it seems dodging is the only thing he's good at. Suddenly, she hesitates, realizing something is wrong. With that, she wonders why her attacks aren't hitting him. After observing her movements, the young man simply says he understands. He then states that she's been too busy playing corporate queen, and that her moves have gotten sloppy. With a smile, he declares that she's no better than Iwako now, leaving her speechless. Furious, Lei Ruoxi yells at him to stop his nonsense and prepares a new attack. With that, she continues her charge and seems to have landed a direct hit this time. She then thinks that she got him, that she finally hit him. Suddenly, Kyosuke says, "Too bad," as he materializes behind her in a wave of energy. As she recovers, the woman curses at him, unable to understand what happened. Lei Ruoxi wonders if that was void magic, as she's never heard of it having such an effect. She then considers that if that's the case, she needs more power and infuses her weapon with fire energy. With that, she decides she'll finish him with her next blow. As she prepares, she yells that she'll make sure to shut him up. She then charges forward with her fire attack, screaming for him to take it. However, the young man stops the flaming blade with just 2 fingers. Disbelieving what she sees, she just mutters that it can't be. Kyosuke then says he guesses this is all her powers amount to. He then thinks that she's even worse than she was 20 years ago, and if so, he has no choice but to use that. Taking a step back, Lei Ruoxi questions him, asking what he is. Suddenly, she pulls out a syringe containing a red liquid. With a swift motion, she injects the substance directly into her neck. Immediately, a dark energy explodes from her body and fills the room. Watching the scene, he simply comments that she's really willing to go that far. With that, the woman's body begins to transform amidst the aura. Finally, now transformed, she glares at him and questions if he is the monster. In her new form, Lei Ruoxi laughs and claims he can't beat her now. Kyosuke then asks if she's trying to win with an enhancement drug, and if she really thinks it's that easy. She warns him not to underestimate her, asking if he has any idea how much time and money went into that drug. She explains that she gathered rare materials from deep within the dungeons and spent years refining the serum. She adds that ever since witnessing that inhuman power 20 years ago, she's been searching for a way to reach that level. With a smile, she declares she's now found a power that surpasses everything, and that he should thank her for it. The young man simply replies that it's pathetic, leaving her stunned. He then asks if she really believes she surpasses everything while bragging about something she got from a drug. Furious at his comment, the woman demands to know what he just said. He then apologizes for interrupting her little monologue as he shifts his fighting stance. He then states it's time to end this, as fire-like energy emanates from his fists. She agrees and says they'll settle once and for all who's the strongest. As she charges forward to attack, she yells for him to get ready. The attack misses Kyosuke as he dodges, but it destroys the wall behind where he was standing. Lei Ruoxi then asks what he thinks, stating that this is the culmination of her research. She then lunges forward, shouting that she'll send him back to the afterlife again. With that, her fist lands squarely on Kyosuke's silhouette. She seems to have sent him flying to the other side of the room with a single blow. She then thinks she's finally won. Suddenly, she looks down and realizes an ice crystal trap has pierced her leg. The young man reveals he planted it when she launched her attack. In disbelief, she screams and asks how he managed to do that. He explains that because her henchman used the technique earlier, he figured out how his opponent uses body enhancement magic. Kyosuke admits her drug is impressive, but all he did was kick up a gust of wind. Furious, she asks if he dares to mock the results of her research. He simply tells her to stop with the nonsense. He then accuses her of trampling on people and having the audacity to call it progress. He concludes by saying she disgusts him, leaving her speechless. With that, she prepares to charge once more. Enraged, Lei Ruoxi screams at him to shut up as she lunges for a final blow. However, Kyosuke stops her attack effortlessly, grabbing her arm firmly. He then hits her with a single punch that throws her backward. With the impact, the dark energy begins to dissipate from her body. Lying on the floor, she wonders why her power isn't working anymore. With that, her transformation completely wears off, and she falls to the ground, defeated. As he watches her, he thinks that this is Kyosuke's strength now. As he walks away, the young man tells his opponent that it was never real power to begin with. Outside the building, he suddenly hears his name being called. Turning around, he finds Asahi and says he's relieved she's okay. She replies that he seems to be too. Just then, reporters arrive on the scene, confirming that the Lei company was attacked, just as the tip-off claimed. Asahi then asks if he was the one who did it, but Kyosuke gives a vague reply, saying, "Who knows?" He then reflects that the truth about Lei's crimes has come to light. The test subjects are safe, and she has lost everything. As he watches the scene, the girl calls his name again to get his attention. She then says she still doesn't quite understand what's happening, but if it weren't for him, she wouldn't be here now. With that, Asahi gives him a heartfelt thank you. The gesture makes Kyosuke realize he had almost forgotten something. He then remembers how helping others used to mean everything to him. Later, night falls over the city. Then, a news report announces that illegal human experiments were being conducted in a secret laboratory owned by Lei Ruoxi. The reporter explains that the discovery was made after Lei was apparently attacked by an unknown assailant. She concludes by saying the former executive is showing signs of memory loss and the attacker's identity remains unknown. As he wonders how the others will react, the program is interrupted by breaking news. The anchor announces that Nathaniel of the Pentagram Saints has issued a public statement. Hearing the name, Kyosuke reacts, repeating to himself in surprise, Nathaniel. On the screen, Nathaniel says that on behalf of the Pentagram Saints, he is there to deliver an urgent message. He states that he can only say they are all devastated by the Lei Ruoxi incident. Nathaniel concludes by saying that, as her comrades, they feel a deep sense of shame for not noticing Lei's descent into darkness. Kyosuke then questions if they didn't notice, concluding that the Pentagram Saints are going to play dumb again. As he grips the remote in anger, he realizes this is exactly what they did 20 years ago. He reflects that these people haven't changed at all, lying without blinking an eye just to protect their precious status as heroes. He then realizes that to them, people like Asahi and himself were just stepping stones to power. Thinking of Nathaniel Cavell, he recalls that based on his past actions, there's a high chance he was the one who orchestrated his exile. Kyosuke continues, remembering that the man was always calculating and cautious, and that no one has found out where he is. Still, he decides that if that's the case, then so be it. He then picks up his phone and prepares to do something. Elsewhere, a woman in white kneels in prayer inside a grand cathedral. Soon, a messenger approaches and says that's what he said, addressing her as Lady Claudia. Claudia simply replies that she understands the situation. She then returns to her prayers, asking the Lord to guide them to a future filled with light. Meanwhile, a man named Lord Ingolf is informed during his training that the council meeting is about to begin. He replies that he understands and will be there shortly, as his subordinate apologizes for the interruption. As he gets up, he curses Lei, wondering what she was thinking. Finally, Nathaniel observes the other council members on a video call screen. He then announces that it's time to begin the Pentagram Saints Council. He then addresses everyone present, telling them to start the meeting. In a dark room, a video conference ends, the matter at hand considered closed. Claudia asks if the illegal experiments have been exposed, finding the whole situation regrettable. Outraged, Ingolf says the group's honor has been stained by these actions. Nathaniel asks if they agree with what was said, but he quickly clarifies, stating the experiments were the scientists' own doing. With that, he claims the rest of the group knew nothing about the matter. From a distance, Iwako watches and realizes they're just blaming her so they can abandon her. He's almost certain Nathaniel knew everything about the experiments. One of the members on the call is shocked, thinking about how easily they discarded her. But the man sets it aside, as the most important thing now is to follow the orders he's received. The scene returns to the meeting, with one member curious about the so-called aggressor. Iwako then reveals that a letter from the culprit himself has arrived. Shocked by the news, they ask Iwako to read the letter's contents to everyone. He picks up the paper, his hand trembling slightly, but confirms he will read the message right away. The letter begins by saying the sender has returned from the gate and will now deal with them. Iwako finishes reading the letter, which threatens to deal with all of them very soon. Upon hearing the name Kyoichiro, everyone on the call is completely shocked by the revelation. The woman is still doubtful, wondering if someone is just using his name to scare them, but Nathaniel immediately denies it, since only someone who was at the gate would know those details. She then suggests it might have been time magic, but he tells her to stay calm. Ingolf angrily says that if Kyoichiro is back, they'll defeat him again. Nathaniel agrees with Ingolf, saying that for now they don't need to do anything. He then suggests with a smile that they just watch and see what Kyoichiro will do. The scene changes to a dark office, where Ingolf is watching the night through a window. Looking at the sky, he whispers Kyoichiro's name, remembering his former comrade, but his face fills with hatred, and he screams that he'll never be able to forgive him. Elsewhere, Iwako calls Kyosuke, telling him he has followed his orders. From this, Kyosuke realizes that Nathaniel is being cautious and won't attack right now, but he doesn't care, as he knows they won't be able to stay idle for long. So he decides to act, and tells Iwako they'll begin the attack right away. Iwako asks, a bit nervous, what they're going to do now, but Kyosuke replies calmly. With a confident smile, he asks Iwako to arrange his transfer to one of Ingolf's academies. Iwako understands he's going after Ingolf, and Kyosuke confirms it, using an exchange program. But he makes it clear that Ingolf isn't like the others, as there are no bad rumors about him. Even so, Kyosuke insists, saying he needs to at least see the man's face. He then ends the call, leaving all the bureaucratic details in Iwako's hands. Alone in his room, Kyosuke stares out at the city, lost in thought. He thinks that it doesn't matter if there are no rumors, because that doesn't change the fact of the betrayal. The scene cuts to a plane flying high in the sky, indicating the journey has begun. In a classroom, a girl watches the plane fly by and gives a very suspicious smile. We then see Kyosuke walking with firm steps down a hallway, arriving at his destination. He finally arrives in Germany, ready to put his plan for revenge into action. He had already confirmed the Academy's connection to Ingolf, so everything was set. With a serious look, he decides he will use the German Academy to get closer to his target. And without wasting any time, Kyosuke starts walking toward his first objective. Arriving at the Academy, he spots a girl and finds her irritatingly persistent. He watches her from a distance, seeing that she's being bothered by some guys. The two men surround her, and from her appearance, he wonders if she's Japanese, but then he remembers that they speak a completely different language there. To understand the conversation, he uses his ability to translate everything automatically. With the magic activated, he can hear one of the guys telling the other not to worry. The man then asks the girl out, promising it'll be worth her while, but she refuses on the spot, saying she won't go out with a bunch of thugs. Angered by her response, they threaten to punish her for insulting them like that. One of them grabs her forcefully, but Kyosuke decides he's seen enough. He approaches and yells, telling them to get lost and leave the girl alone. The aggressor turns around, asking who the hell he is, while the girl looks surprised. Kyosuke repeats more angrily, telling that piece of trash to let go of the girl right now. The bully becomes furious at the insult, calling our hero a bastard. He activates the power in his hands and lunges at Kyosuke. His friend gets angry and yells not to be underestimated, charging in as well. With a flaming fist, he tries to land a direct blow to Kyosuke's face, but Kyosuke unleashes a wave of green energy, sending them all flying. The girl can't believe it, stammering that he defeated them both with a single blow. Kyosuke just stares at her, finding the whole situation rather boring, to be honest. From a distance, other students watch everything, wondering what the hell is wrong with him. Defeated, the attackers run off screaming apologies, scared to death. The girl approaches to thank him for saving her, but he says it was nothing. Just then, he notices they've drawn a crowd and suggests they get out of there for now. The two start walking down the street together, with Kyosuke looking a bit thoughtful. In her thoughts, she remembers the last time someone saved her was when she met that person. The scene shows the two walking side by side on a sidewalk, with a stone archway just ahead. She then calls out to get his attention, and he turns to see what she wants. With a smile, she thanks him again, saying that thanks to him, the situation didn't get any worse. He tells her not to worry about it and thinks she's just the straight-laced type. But as he looks at her again, he starts to get a strange sense of familiarity. He gets the feeling he's seen her somewhere before, but he can't place where. She notices his uniform and asks if he's a Japanese student, and he confirms. He explains that he just arrived for an exchange program and was on his way to the training academy. As a way of thanking him, she offers to take him there since she knows the way. Kyosuke accepts the offer, and the two look at each other for a moment before continuing on. Crossing a bridge, she asks if he's traveling the world, and he confirms. She stretches and says she has her own reasons for being there. He wonders if she's the same age as him, thinking it's rare for a girl to travel alone, so he asks if it isn't dangerous, since she could end up in trouble again. But she replies cutely, saying she knows a spell or two to protect herself. The girl changes the subject, asking if he's really going to study at that training academy. She explains that the school is famous for being based solely on each student's merit. There's a whole ranking system with a hierarchy and points that reward achievements. He understands, realizing they take meritocracy way more seriously than in Japan. Just then, he remembers that Iwako warned him about Ingolf's training with the top students. This means that to get close to his target, he needs to stand out at that school. With a determined smile, he thinks this is exactly the kind of challenge he likes. The girl then points ahead, announcing that they've finally reached their destination. In the distance, they spot the massive structure of the Lanzig Training Academy. He thanks her for her help and says goodbye, telling her he can go on his own from here. Before he leaves, she holds out her hand and introduces herself, saying her name is Shirato Sayuki. He shakes her hand and replies, revealing his name as Asai Kyosuke. Upon hearing his name, the girl gets a shocked expression, as if she recognizes it. Kyosuke notices her reaction and asks what's wrong, a bit confused, but she plays it off, saying it's nothing, just that his name sounds like someone else's. She then says goodbye, wishing him good luck at the academy as she walks away across the bridge. He watches her walk away, thinking there's something strange about her that bothers him, but he pushes it aside, because now it's time to finally enter the academy. Kyosuke walks alone through the city streets, getting closer to his great objective. Suddenly, he hears someone calling him and looks up, trying to see who it is. A redhead glares at him, asking if he's the new guy from Japan and calls him over for a chat. Kyosuke calls him a delinquent, and the guy gets pissed off at the nickname. He jumps down from the wall saying he highly doubts a guy from Japan is anything special around here, and warns him that he's going to hold a welcoming ceremony. Kyosuke can only sigh, unable to believe he's already gotten into a fight right after arriving. He remembers what the girl said, confirming that the school really is based on merit. He understands the guy wants a duel and accepts the challenge without a second thought. Mateo likes his attitude and leaps from the wall to start the battle right away. With his fists glowing, he gets ready and yells that it's time to start the fight. Without wasting time, he launches his first attack, yelling for Kyosuke to eat this. But Kyosuke blocks the blow with a single hand, showing his superiority. He's completely shocked by what happened, unable to comprehend his opponent's power. Kyosuke catches the stakes in midair, saying the quantity was good but the power was weak. With a mocking look, he creates a fireball and says he'll show him how it's done, and then he unleashes a giant attack, a mix of fire and earth with absurd power. Mateo is thrown far away by the explosion, with no chance to defend himself. Kyosuke finishes the thought, saying that a real attack should, at the very least, be like that. Completely terrified, Mateo wonders what kind of monster he just faced. Kyosuke just sighs, thinking the whole fight was a waste of time. The scene shifts to the girl, who answers a call and confirms the name of a Lady Claudia. She reveals that she has already made contact with the target, who is our Kyosuke, Asai Kyosuke. With a serious look, she reports that she will remain in Germany to keep a close watch on the target. The scene takes us to Germany, straight to the imposing Lanzig Training Academy. Inside, Kyosuke finally receives his student ID, completing his enrollment. With all the paperwork settled, he can now enter the local dungeons to train. He glances at the document, noticing it's a bit different from the ones he used in Japan. Then he realizes this is the point system the girl had mentioned earlier. Since he has no classes today, he decides to check out the dungeons in this country. With determined steps, Kyosuke turns and walks toward his first challenge. Hidden, Mateo watches from a distance, still shocked by the power he witnessed. Kyosuke knows that to get closer to Ingolf, he'll need to move up to the special class. So he decides to start earning points in that high-level dungeon. Upon entering the portal, he finds himself in a scene of dark, mysterious ruins. He then gets ready to fight, curious to see what kind of monster will appear. Suddenly, giant skeletons appear, looking like much stronger undead. But with a smirk, he reveals he already knows their weak spot from his past life. The monster then charges with its giant axe, coming at him with full force. He dodges the giant axe with a swift move, narrowly escaping the blow. The attack just grazes him, but he manages to dodge it without a scratch, easy. He remembers that the undead are weak against fire and impact attacks, so he uses his fire magic, landing a direct punch right in the middle of the skeleton, and the monster shatters into 1,000 pieces, unable to withstand the force of that single blow. The other skeletons are shocked to see their partner defeated so easily. With a smile, he beckons them to fight, telling them to bring it on. After a while, he reaches the final room, expecting the dungeon boss to be there, so he walks down the dark corridor, ready for whatever awaits him. At the far end, he spots the boss, a dark creature with skulls floating around it. He feels the monster's heavy presence, realizing this will be a real challenge. To start, he decides to test the boss's defenses with a simpler attack first. He then fires a massive fireball, wanting to see its reaction. But the boss uses dark magic to absorb the fire, showing it was nothing. The collision of magic creates a huge explosion, lighting up the entire dungeon room. He realizes the boss nullified his magic, understanding it was on another level. Then, the monster prepares a counterattack, creating a power of pure dark energy, and without warning, it fires it straight at Kyosuke. Kyosuke is startled by the speed, barely having time to react to the approaching attack. He notices the spell melts everything it touches, a very high-level magic, but with a smirk, he realizes he has a chance to turn the tables. He thinks that maybe he can use all that power to his advantage in battle. To do that, he concentrates wind magic in his feet to increase his propulsion. With incredible speed, he dodges the attack and charges straight for the boss. The monster is in shock, not understanding how he appeared in front of it so quickly. Kyosuke then challenges it, asking if it can handle its own spell, and with a swift move, he shoves the sphere of darkness against the skeleton's head. The magic begins to consume the boss's body, which screams in pain from its own power. The creature is defeated, leaving a sword to drop on the ground as a reward for the fight. He then straightens his uniform, as if that battle was nothing special. He clenches his fist, thinking that the spell was strong, but he couldn't replicate it perfectly. That's why he decides he needs to level up his void magic as soon as possible. But more importantly, he senses someone else nearby, watching everything. He then tells the person to come out, as he knows very well someone is hiding there. Mateo sheepishly comes out of hiding, saying he didn't think he'd be discovered. With a smile, he confesses he was watching the fight and hopes it's not a problem. Kyosuke immediately eyes him with suspicion, thinking he hasn't learned his lesson and wants another duel. But upon sensing the guy's aura, he realizes something is very strange. It's clear he's hiding something, so Mateo decides to settle this once and for all. His eyes glow red, and he prepares to show his true, hidden power. Kyosuke is shocked when he feels that energy, not expecting it at all. He prepares to fight, wondering if the guy has a secret weapon or something. But suddenly, Mateo throws himself on the ground, begging to be accepted as his disciple. Kyosuke is completely confused by the scene, not understanding what's happening. He tries to understand what the guy wants, and notices a strange object in his hand. Mateo explains it's a Japanese bow, and he heard you offer sake as a sign of respect. He keeps begging, saying he was drawn in by his strength and wants to learn magic from him. With a clenched fist, he admits the fight was insane, and he feels like an idiot for challenging him. Kyosuke can only think, great, now things have gotten even more complicated. But suddenly his eyes widen, as he senses a new presence in the room. He grabs Mateo, who excitedly asks if he's finally going to be accepted as a disciple. Just then, the dungeon floor begins to shake, and a huge energy suddenly erupts. From the depths, a massive skeletal dragon emerges, roaring with terrifying force. They are both shocked, and Kyosuke realizes that wasn't the true final boss. With the dragon staring them down, Kyosuke understands the real challenge is just beginning. Mateo starts to stammer in fear, and Kyosuke asks what's wrong. He explains that he's seen this in the manuals, and that it's a dragon that once destroyed a village. The boy says that Ingolf barely managed to defeat it, which intrigues Kyosuke. He finally understands the whole situation, bracing himself for the danger ahead. But Mateo panics, yelling that this is madness and that he can't fight the beast. The hero tells him to relax and says there's one more thing he should know. He then reveals that it wasn't Ingolf who killed the dragon, leaving Mateo confused. For the powerful, admitting that someone else was the true hero would be a problem. With a smile, he realizes they twisted the story, calling them cowards. So he decides he'll just kill the dragon again with his own hands. With a determined look, he announces it's time to end this nonsense. Just then, the dragon roars and fires a powerful attack in their direction. Mateo screams in fear, but Kyosuke grabs him and pulls him out of the way of the blast. The force of the attack sends them flying, with Mateo shouting in sheer panic. Kyosuke senses the dragon is much stronger than it was 20 years ago. Leaping towards the dragon, he lands a massive, fiery punch right on the skeletal dragon's skull. The impact is so powerful that the beast's skeleton shatters into 1,000 pieces. Mateo shouts excitedly, celebrating that his master's spell blew the creature away, but Kyosuke cuts him off, saying he hates to spoil the party, but the fight isn't over. Shocked, Mateo watches as the dragon's bones reassemble and regenerate on their own. Kyosuke explains that if the attack is too weak, the creature will simply rebuild itself. He admits the enemy is stronger than he thought and quickly comes up with a new plan. Mateo wonders what he's going to do, as fighting the monster seems impossible. Just then, the dragon fully reconstructs itself, ready for another round. The creature then swings its giant tail, aiming a direct blow at the two of them. And so, they both dodge the dragon's ferocious attack, but Kyosuke gets into position, ready to stop the tail with his bare hands. He braces for the impact, facing the dragon's tail without any fear. Mateo is terrified, thinking he's just trying to block an impossible attack, but Kyosuke focuses his mind, needing to create a sharp image of his power. He explains that the clearer his imagination, the stronger his void magic becomes. Seeing that its attack failed, the dragon opens its mouth to unleash a blast of power. It fires a beam of purple energy straight at our hero. The dust kicks up and Mateo screams in despair, calling out for his new master. He's in shock, afraid that Kyosuke has been defeated by the blow, but the hero emerges in front of the dragon, holding its jaw as if it were nothing. He then announces that with this, the battle will finally come to an end. A wave of magical water envelops the dragon, rendering it unable to move. The monster tries to scream, but its head is the first part to be frozen, and in seconds, the dragon's entire body turns into a giant ice statue. Mateo is speechless, finding the whole display of power incredible. He stares at the frozen dragon, and Mateo thinks his power is just absurd. Now outside the dungeon, the boy runs, asking his new master to wait for him. Kyosuke finds it strange that he's speaking so formally, but Mateo says it's out of respect. He then asks about the card, and Kyosuke says he was thinking about the dungeon points. At that, he asks Mateo how the points affect class ranks at the academy. The boy explains that for every 10,000 points, he moves up a class, needing 30,000 in total. But he warns that the points are fixed, and the dragon didn't provide any extra bonus. Seeing he only got 500 points, he calculates he would need to run the dungeon 60 times. Kyosuke gets discouraged, but Mateo notices he's really aiming for the special class. With a smile, he says there's actually a shortcut to get the points faster. Kyosuke gets right in his face and tells him to spit it out, startling the boy. Awkwardly, he explains that in 1 month, the Sublime Paradise Festival will take place. It's an event where students compete against each other in various difficult challenges, and most importantly, the grand winner takes home 20,000 points all at once. Kyosuke realizes this is his chance to finally get close to Ingolf. With a clenched fist and a serious look, he declares that he's going to take first place in this festival. A month goes by, and the day of the Sublime Sky Festival at the Academy finally arrives. One of the older students takes the stage and announces that the festival is about to begin. Mateo gets all excited and tells his master Kyosuke that the moment has come. Kyosuke then thinks that if he earns enough points and gets first place, he'll be promoted to the special class. And with that, he'd be one step closer to finding the person who betrayed him 20 years ago. Their mission is simple. They just need to get the jewel at the top of the tower. The announcer says the method doesn't matter. They can fight or climb. The choice is theirs. He ends his speech, asking everyone to show off the strength they've trained for. Kyosuke gives a confident smile, as a competition like this is perfect for him. Mateo dashes ahead, yelling that they're going to take first place no matter what. Kyosuke thinks about how he was at a loss when he found out the festival was a team event, but luckily, he had the perfect guy for it. and Mateo accepted right away. Suddenly, someone emerges from the forest and calls out our Kyosuke's name. It was Shirato, who says she came to watch and see him shine in the festival. Mateo is shocked and asks if she's his master's girlfriend, earning him a slap. Suddenly, a student spots Kyosuke's group and yells for everyone to look over. Then, the students look up at the big screen and see that several important figures are watching. Among them was the imposing Ingolf, who watched everything with a serious gaze. Kyosuke is shocked and furious upon recognizing Ingolf. A man thanks Ingolf for coming, but he says he was just curious about the festival. With a smirk, he reveals he's there to see if he can find a real golden goose. He wants to see if there are any promising young mages, as Kyosuke glares at him, and Shirato remains silent. Then the festival finally begins, with the announcer ordering all students into the tower. Kyosuke and Mateo enter the tower with calm expressions, ready for whatever lies ahead. Looking up, they are amazed by the massive structure inside. Mateo gets ready for action and tells his master it's time to move, and he agrees. But out of nowhere, another participant attacks a group, starting the chaos right away. To make matters worse, a giant monster with a green aura appears in the middle of everyone. Mateo remembers they were warned about creatures and asks his master what they should do. But when he turns around, Kyosuke is already gone, leaving him completely confused. Out of nowhere, Kyosuke appears and strikes the monster with a single blow, leaving Mateo speechless. He lands on the ground calmly, as if it took no effort at all. Then he asks Mateo why he's dawdling and tells him to keep climbing. Mateo looks a bit sheepish, but quickly agrees and starts running to catch up. The scene of Kyosuke's agility is broadcast on the big screen, impressing the entire audience. At this, Ingolf is surprised and wonders if the boy is really Japanese. Shirato smiles, as she already knew he was no ordinary person, and the others are dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Mateo also shows his strength and defeats another monster. Kyosuke asks if he's okay, and Mateo replies that he still has plenty of energy left. He then tells him not to slow down, and the two continue their ascent up the tower. But Kyosuke is much faster, leaving his partner in the dust on the stairs. With a focused gaze, Kyosuke senses that something is wrong up ahead. Just then, he shouts to stop as the floor is destroyed, revealing a trap. On the other side, two students appear, laughing, and tell them they won't get past. The rival mocks him, asking what he said, since they couldn't hear him from down there. Then he bids farewell to the losers and runs off, leaving Mateo furious. Not knowing what to do, Mateo turns to his master and asks what the plan is now, but Kyosuke calmly replies that it's easy, as they just need to fly across. Mateo is completely confused by the idea, and asks how they're supposed to do something like that. With that, Kyosuke grabs him and leaps into the abyss, using magic to fly while the other screams. Meanwhile, the pair of bullies reaches the final chamber, celebrating their easy victory. One of them says it was easier than he thought, but a mysterious voice speaks from behind them. It was Kyosuke, landing right in front of the door, leaving the two completely shocked. With a smirk, he informs them that the obstacle they created barely slowed him down. Mateo arrives right after, shouting that he won't lose to a couple of clowns who already look dead. Outraged, the two get ready to attack, telling them not to underestimate them. Kyosuke just watches their movements and says they're too slow for him, and in the blink of an eye, he lunges forward and hits them both with a single precise strike. They fall unconscious like dolls. Mateo is completely shocked by his master's surreal speed. He's stunned, as he couldn't even see Kyosuke move. He was so fast. With the rivals defeated, Kyosuke opens the door and finally reaches the final chamber. Inside, they find the jewel shining on a pedestal, the objective of their mission. Mateo celebrates excitedly, yelling that they were the first to reach the top of the tower, but Kyosuke cuts him off with a serious look, warning him that it wasn't over yet. Suddenly, the jewel begins to glow intensely, releasing a strange energy, and out of nowhere, armored knights rise from the ground, leaving the pair completely baffled. In the audience, even the organizers are surprised, as this wasn't part of the program, but Ingolf just smiles, eager to see if they can overcome this test. Kyosuke then faces the knights with a sharp gaze, preparing for the new challenge. The armored knights advance as a group, surrounding the duo cornered in the center. Kyosuke notices the soldiers are clearly not human, while Mateo is terrified. He then realizes he knows someone who uses this kind of magic to control so many soldiers, and right then, he's certain that Ingolf is the one behind this. The organizer asks if that magic belongs to Lord Ingolf, and he replies, more or less. With a smirk, he explains that ending the festival too quickly would be boring. The man calls him cruel, but Ingolf says dealing with this is the bare minimum for a mage. He doesn't think any student could pass and wants to see how they'll get the jewel. With that, Ingolf stares at the big screen, eager to see what they've got. Mateo gets desperate and asks his master what they're going to do to get out of there. He says it's impossible to defeat so many soldiers, and they all look very strong. But Kyosuke firmly replies that he must do this if he wants to achieve his goal. Seeing his master's determination, Mateo swallows his fear and agrees to fight too. He prepares for battle, saying he'll at least try to provide some cover for his master, but a knight charges at him in an instant, making him scream in pure panic. A knight lunges at Kyosuke ready to strike him with a giant axe, but Kyosuke activates a strengthening spell, enveloping his body in an aura of power. He concentrates fire energy in his hand, preparing to counter the enemy's attack, and with a single, well-aimed punch, he destroys the knight, shattering its armor to pieces. The crowd goes wild, unable to believe he defeated the monster with his bare hands. Kyosuke then prepares another attack, aiming at the other soldiers closing in on him. The impact of the blow creates an explosion that sends several knights flying at once. Mateo's jaw drops, thinking to himself that his master is completely insane. Ingolf smiles, as the Japanese boy is using very powerful magic for a student, but he slams his fist on the table and states with certainty that it won't be that easy for him. And at that very moment, the defeated knights begin to multiply again in the hall. Mateo despairs, wondering what the school was thinking by doing this. Shirato thinks he doesn't stand a chance, but he still wants to see if he can overcome the challenge. And now everyone is looking at Asai Kyosuke, curious to see his next move. One of the knights attacks with its axe, but Kyosuke manages to dodge at the last second. He looks around and estimates there are about 30 soldiers, a very difficult number to handle, but he remembers his past and thinks this is nothing compared to what he's faced before. The knights hurl their weapons toward Kyosuke, who manages to block them using an earth spell. A soldier tries to use this opening to attack, but Kyosuke uses a wind spell, sending him flying. He thinks defeating them one by one is a waste of time, and that he'd rather use an area of effect spell, but he doesn't have time to create a new spell, as he has to constantly defend himself. This means his only option is to use a skill he already knows well. With a touch to the ground, he uses a movement spell to dodge. The best way out is to use a spell he's seen before, as it would be faster to recreate now. He hates the bastard who used it, but he swallows his pride and decides to use the spell anyway. His eyes glow intensely, and he finally activates the powerful void magic. The magic shatters the floor, and Kyosuke floats in the air, controlling all the debris. Ingolf is in shock, as he instantly recognizes what kind of power that was. Then, Kyosuke is enveloped in green energy, preparing another devastating spell. He yells and unleashes his secret technique, a powerful elemental fusion magic. With it, he combines wind and earth, creating a tornado that swallows all the knights. The explosion is so powerful it destroys the top of the tower, surprising the students down below. After the dust settles, all that remains in the room is the wreckage of the battle. Kyosuke then calmly walks toward the pedestal, where the jewel was still glowing. He picks it up with a smile and says the game is over, declaring his victory in the festival. Down below, Mateo goes wild with joy, screaming that he can't believe he did it. The entire crowd goes crazy, while Mateo celebrates with his master on the big screen. A female student is dumbfounded, as she never imagined she'd see fusion magic there. Shirato and the other students comment that his power is simply terrifying. Ingolf can't contain himself and starts laughing, thoroughly impressed by what he saw. He thinks that Kyosuke used a spell that took Iwako 20 years to develop. With this, he becomes fascinated by the boy, finding his potential unbelievable. And he decides that if the boy makes it to the special class, he will train him personally without any mercy. The scene shifts to an auditorium, where the student being promoted to the special class is announced. The chosen student is Asai Kyosuke, who stands up and walks toward the main stage. The other students comment on how incredible he is, since he's only been at the school for a month. They're still in shock over everything he did during the festival. A classmate says it was insane, but Mateo claims that for his master, this is just normal. Next, at the armband ceremony, the announcer says there's a special guest. Kyosuke tenses up, suspicious of who this guest might be. The announcer then asks them to welcome the guest, and Ingolf emerges from behind the curtain. It was Lord Ingolf himself, who takes the stage to lead the rest of the ceremony. Everyone is in shock, unable to believe it was really the feared Ingolf standing there. Kyosuke doesn't understand why Ingolf would personally come to the academy for this. He wonders what Ingolf's true objective might be. Ingolf then stares at him and says he was quite entertained during the festival. With a serious look, Kyosuke simply replies that he's honored by the compliment. To conclude the ceremony, Ingolf hands him the special class card. Ingolf leans in and whispers for Kyosuke to come to his estate later. In the audience, Mateo and the others are confused, not understanding what they were talking about. With that, the award ceremony finally ends to a round of applause. Ingolf then turns and leaves the stage, leaving the students behind without another word. Kyosuke stands there, wondering what the hell Ingolf could be plotting. The scene changes to night, showing the entrance of a gigantic, luxurious mansion. A butler greets him at the door, confirming his name and saying they were expecting him. He then wonders what Ingolf wants, and if he has discovered his true identity. Kyosuke is frustrated, wishing he had more time to prepare for this meeting. But if he's been found out, he knows a fight could break out right here, right now. Upon entering the room, he finds Ingolf sitting at a table laden with food. Ingolf notices his presence, greets him, and simply tells him to sit. He says they'll talk after dinner, but Kyosuke doesn't seem to agree. With a serious look, he ignores the invitation and asks what Ingolf really wants. Ingolf repeats that his feats at the festival were impressive and caught his attention. Ingolf settles into his chair and says there's something he'd like to ask. With an intimidating gaze, he questions what exactly our Kyosuke was hiding. Kyosuke tenses up, wondering if Ingolf had already discovered his secret, but he clenches his fist and tells himself no, that couldn't be true. He thinks that if Ingolf knew, he would have been more direct, so it must be something else. Then Ingolf reveals that fusion magic was Iwako's life's work, and he wants to know how he used it. At this, Kyosuke smirks, because it was exactly as he had thought. He makes up a story about receiving special training from Iwako when he still lived in Japan. Ingolf seems to buy the story and asks if that's where he learned the technique. Kyosuke then praises Iwako, saying he's a great teacher and that he owes him everything. Ingolf agrees and praises the young man, saying he managed to master the magic well. But right after, he warns him to be careful and not use this power for evil. He says that otherwise, he'll end up like Masato Kyoichiro, the man who nearly destroyed the world. Hearing this, Kyosuke remains silent, just listening very carefully. Finally, he recalls the disaster at the SSS rank dungeon that happened 20 years ago. Ingolf explains that Kyoichiro drowned in his own strength and ended up creating a terrible plan. He continues, saying the hero released the monsters from the dungeon to cause chaos outside. The plan was to eliminate all his allies, so he would be the only hero left in the end. Kyosuke is completely shocked, unable to believe what he was hearing from Ingolf. Ingolf says that luckily they stopped him, but that this was the truth behind it all. Kyosuke clenches his fist tightly, thinking that the whole story was a lie. With his blood boiling, he decides he can't let such slander go unanswered. Ingolf tries to give a warning, but Kyosuke interrupts him, saying it's all right, sir. He then says that power is necessary to fight evil, not the other way around. He affirms that he'll do whatever it takes to become stronger than anyone there. Ingolf watches him intently, seeing the reflection of his determination in his eyes. At this, he gives a slight smile and says, "The boy is as interesting as ever." With that, he decides he will reward our Kyosuke's fighting spirit. Kyosuke is confused and asks what this reward would be, and Ingolf confirms it right away. To everyone's surprise, he offers to be his training partner in the next cycle. Ingolf then challenges him with a smile, saying the offer is only valid if he accepts. Kyosuke doesn't think twice, and replies that he would be honored by the opportunity. With a firm stance, he accepts the challenge, saying he'll be glad to face him in training. The scene cuts to the street at night, showing our Kyosuke leaving the mansion. He thinks this is the best reward he could have asked for from Ingolf. With a determined step, he promises himself that Ingolf can just wait. As he walks, he swears he'll crush him with everything he's got in the training. The day of the special class's regular training at the academy has arrived. Two students walk by, mentioning that today is the elite class's training session. One of them says jealously that he wishes he could train with Ingolf too, which surprises the other. But suddenly he stops talking when he feels a dark presence nearby. It's Kyosuke, sitting on a bench with a heavy aura and a menacing gaze. The two are completely terrified and decide to run off to avoid any trouble. Kyosuke watches them leave, thinking that the day to settle the score with Ingolf has finally come. Clenching his fist, he prepares himself. Today, he's going to even the score with Ingolf. He remembers Ingolf promised him a training battle during today's class. To Ingolf, this might just be a lesson, but for Kyosuke, it's something entirely different. He vows to crush him and make him regret the betrayal from 20 years ago. The scene changes to the training field, where the instructor announces that the class is about to begin. He then calls for Lord Ingolf to introduce himself and start the day's activities. Ingolf walks confidently toward the students, displaying his imposing presence. Kyosuke glares at him with a serious, focused look. The moment he's been waiting for has arrived. Ingolf begins his speech, saying he has faith in the academy's best students. Then he announces that to spice things up, he's decided to hold a training match today. Ingolf laughs and tells them not to be nervous, as he has already chosen his opponent. At that, he calls out for Asai Kyosuke, ordering our Kyosuke to step forward. In the stands, Mateo is completely shocked, unable to believe what he's seeing. He thinks it was worth skipping class to see his master fight against Ingolf. Suddenly, he notices the presence of Shirado, the girl who was also at the festival. With a smile, Mateo thinks that things between her and his master are going well. Shirado feels someone staring at her strangely, but decides to just ignore it. She then focuses on the fight, wanting to see how he plans to face one of the world's heroes. On the field, the two face off, with Ingolf asking if they can begin. Kyosuke thinks that Ingolf is one of the strongest fighters, completely different from the others. He swears to himself that the one who will be kneeling on the ground today is Ingolf. Ingolf then gets ready and announces that he will make the first move. In an instant, he charges at our Kyosuke with absurd speed. Ingolf shouts and punches the ground, releasing a massive wave of power. The blast of energy rushes forward, forcing Kyosuke to defend himself from the impact. In the stands, the students are startled, wondering if that was wind magic, but Shirado realizes it wasn't. The shockwave came solely from the force of the punch. Kyosuke manages to hold his ground and wonders if Ingolf used strengthening magic. To defend himself, he decides to counter with an earth magic barrier, but the stone wall shatters instantly against the force of Ingolf's blow. He looks surprised and comments that the young man actually managed to block his attack. Kyosuke understands it was body enhancement magic, which is why the blow hit like a truck. He barely managed to stop it with reinforced stone, as the power behind it was insane. But Ingolf just laughs and tells Kyosuke he's completely mistaken. With that, He takes off his jacket, revealing he wasn't even using body enhancement yet. With his fist in flames, he now shows what his real power looks like. Ingolf then launches an even stronger attack, causing a gigantic explosion. Kyosuke braces for the impact, feeling the pressure of the power coming toward him. He uses wind magic on his feet to escape the blast by a hair's breadth. Ingolf doesn't stop, throwing several punches into the air and creating multiple explosions on the field. With the help of the wind, Kyosuke manages to dodge, but he's already being pushed back. Mateo is shocked, unable to believe his master is being overwhelmed like that. Ingolf notices he escaped and warns that despite his instincts, the fight isn't over. With that, he launches a devastating blast of energy that rushes straight at him. Kyosuke barely manages to dodge. He thinks that with an impact like that, he can't hold back anymore. He stands up determined, realizing it's no time to conserve his power. Ingolf finds this strange, wondering why he stopped moving. Kyosuke then begins to gather a huge amount of wind magic around him. Shirato recognizes the technique, saying it's the same one he used at the festival. With his eyes glowing, he prepares to activate his powerful fusion magic. The green energy starts to pull in debris, creating a tornado ready for a counterattack. The tornado of rocks rushes forward, heading for Ingolf with destructive force. Ingolf braces for the impact and tries to hold back the attack, yelling from the effort. The two energies then collide in an explosion, with Ingolf trying to nullify the magic. When the smoke clears, he has managed to stop the tornado, showing he's still standing. Kyosuke is surprised, as Ingolf's shockwave had lessened the impact of his attack. He realizes that Ingolf has gotten even stronger after 20 years, which is a problem. With a smile, Ingolf praises the attack and says he shouldn't have held back either. With that, he raises his power level even further, showing his true fighting power. Kyosuke is in shock at the power of the attack, not understanding what was happening. Ingolf was now covered in an absolutely absurd aura of power. And with a challenging look, he calls for the young man to continue the fight, because now it's for real. Kyosuke wonders if he's using a spell he doesn't even know he has. He questions if he learned it sometime in the last 20 years. He wants to see just how much it was worth. With his eye glowing brightly, he announces he's starting his attack right now. Then, he extends his hand and fires a powerful magic spell at his opponent. Ingolf recognizes it as earth magic and braces for the coming impact. Kyosuke thinks the explosion is too big. There's no way his enemy can escape. With a grunt of pain, Ingolf is thrown back by the force of the initial attack. Seizing the opportunity, the boy prepares a fusion spell to attack again. He then unleashes his fusion magic, creating an even more devastating attack than before. The blast of energy surges forward, hitting Ingolf with brutal force. From a distance, Mateo cheers excitedly, shouting that his master is using his best technique. Meanwhile, Sayuki notices their opponent is off balance, and the timing is perfect. She's certain this final attack will hit its mark dead on. And with a mocking smile, he yells, unleashing a golden aura and showing off his full power. Kyosuke is speechless, wondering what kind of monster this guy is. With his bare hand, Ingolf simply stops the spell as if it were nothing. He then roars, dispersing the fusion magic with sheer brute force. With a mocking look, he stares down Kyosuke, displaying his superiority in the fight. Kyosuke is in shock, unable to believe his magic was pierced just like that. Sayuki is also stunned, saying he managed to nullify an extremely high-level power. Amidst the smoke, Ingolf praises the attack, calling it an excellent strike, but he warns that it can't pierce his powerful and brilliant mana armor. Kyosuke gets it instantly. Realizing that the golden mist acts as protection, he clenches his fist, thinking the man's durability is just insane. Just then, Ingolf stomps his foot and warns that his armor does much more than defend. He explains that it turns his body into a weapon, merging offense and defense, and with a war cry, he charges at Kyosuke at full speed. Surrounded by a golden aura, Ingolf prepares to deliver a devastating punch, but Kyosuke reacts quickly, jumping back to try and escape the direct blow. Ingolf's fist hits the ground, causing an energy explosion that destroys everything. Mateo is shocked by the scene, shouting in disbelief at what he just saw. Thrown by the shockwave, Kyosuke tries to shield himself from the blast's impact. He manages to land far away, but the battlefield is completely destroyed. With a cut on his face, he thinks that Ingolf is much stronger than before, and that mana armor he mentioned is proving to be a huge problem. Kyosuke has a countermeasure, but the spell isn't complete yet and it's risky. Impatient, Ingolf asks if he's not going to attack, saying if not, it's over. He then decides to end the fight once and for all, charging at the boy with everything he's got. Seeing the danger, Kyosuke realizes he has no choice but to risk it all. With difficulty, he begins to gather a new blue energy, an unknown power. Ingolf questions if he's forging something, doubting it will be able to stop him. With total confidence, he continues his attack, flying towards his target. Ingolf is confused mid-air, not understanding what kind of power it is. Kyosuke's hand glows with a cosmic energy, and Ingolf eyes it seriously. Ingolf's fist then clashes with the magic, creating a collision of power. The force of the impact throws Kyosuke backward, unable to maintain his defense. He cries out in pain, realizing he hasn't mastered this new ability yet. Seeing an opening, Ingolf prepares to deliver the final blow and end the fight. Ingolf says that's enough for today. Kyosuke looks up, surprised, trying to see who suddenly stopped the fight. Ingolf explains that the training was more than enough for him. With a slight smirk, Kyosuke clenches his fist, filled with frustration. The instructor then announces that the training session is over, dismissing all the students. A man approaches and praises Ingolf, saying he was a great inspiration to everyone. The students comment that Asai fought well, but the Pentagram Saints are incredible. Mateo consoles his master, saying there's no shame in losing to Ingolf. But Kyosuke thinks he underestimated his opponent, and that he can't win as things stand. He clenches his fist tightly, and decides he'll hone his magic to become stronger. Meanwhile, the crowd laughs and has fun, relieved that the training is over. But Sayuki watches from a distance, thinking that no one there knows Kyosuke's true potential. Ingolf stands on the field, replaying the moments of the fight in his mind. He wonders what that feeling was, as it didn't seem to be just the will to fight. Still, he smiles, because it had been a long time since he'd had such a good fight. Ingolf then dismisses his thoughts and starts walking away from the field. He keeps thinking about Asai Kyosuke and the power the boy showed in the arena. Ingolf knows the boy isn't the type to give up, and that he'll come back stronger. Later, Ingolf relaxes alone, sipping wine and reflecting on his life. He notes that it's been a long time since he's had a fight that got him so fired up, but he admits he didn't expect that Asai Kyosuke guy to be so strong. Ingolf recalls that for a moment during the battle, he actually felt fear, and come to think of it, he remembers feeling that same way once before, a long time ago. The scene cuts to a flashback, with a scream echoing over a peaceful village. A younger Ingolf is on the ground, and a man says it looks like the victory is his. Surprised, Ingolf asks what kind of spell that was, and if he was hiding his power. His rival smiles and says he was almost defeated and needed to save an ace up his sleeve. Angrily, Ingolf thinks that this guy always manages to exceed his expectations. It's because of all that strength that he considers him his true rival. Full of energy, he gets up and challenges Kyoichiro to another round. Back in the present, Ingolf realizes the drink is making him nostalgic. He understands that a dark past isn't something you can just erase. Still, he takes another drink, missing the thrill of fighting an equal. With a defiant look, Ingolf calls out Asai Kyosuke for a new duel. The scene then shifts to a forest, where Kyosuke is alone, lost in thought. He realizes that after 20 years, he can finally use a certain power. Kyosuke knows he can't beat Ingolf, and that he'll have to train all over again. Luckily, he finds a dark dungeon, which is perfect for this kind of training. So, our hero enters the place, ready to begin his journey to power. Inside, he feels the heavy gravity pulling his body down with absurd force. He remembers Ingolf's punch and knows if he takes another one like that, it's over for him. That's why the first thing he has to do is strengthen his body to withstand the fight. With a smile, he thinks that his new spell will be the final blow in this battle, and he vows to wait for Ingolf, training hard against the various monsters there. 3 days pass, and we return to the students' normal routine at the academy. Sayuki finds it very strange that Kyosuke hasn't returned to the dorm. She wonders where he could have gone, and worries about the boy's disappearance. From a distance, Mateo complains that everything is so boring without his master around. Sayuki approaches and calls out to Mateo, who turns to see what she wants. He recognizes the girl, and says she's one of his master's fans. She thinks it's better this way and asks if he happens to know anything about Kyosuke. A bit awkwardly, Mateo mentions he heard Kyosuke went to train in the Eastern Forest. Hearing this, she wonders if he went to that place she knows. She thanks him for the information and runs off, leaving the boy behind, confused. Alone, he smiles, thinking his master has a very dedicated fan. Now in the forest, Sayuki thinks the hidden dungeon is perfect for his training, but she finds it strange, as there's no way he should know about that secret area, unless a certain possibility is our hero's true identity. The shocking possibility that Asai Kyosuke isn't actually who he says he is, and that he is the legendary Misato Kyoichiro, the old rival of the feared Ingolf. The scene takes us back 1 month, revealing the start of a secret mission. We're shown that Sayuki received a direct order from a mysterious figure. Her task was very clear: investigate who the disguised Kyoichiro could be. And Asai Kyosuke's name was right there, on that long and suspicious list of targets. She thinks that if he really is Kyoichiro, her mission is going to get complicated. She's been here before, and realizes the dungeon is just as brutal as she remembered. She then wonders if Asai Kyosuke has really been training here this whole time. Suddenly, she senses a strange presence and decides to take a careful look. And there he is, standing, right after taking down a giant monster by himself. His body is completely different, much stronger, with a dark and dense aura. She watches from a distance, and notices his aura is completely different than before. And all those monsters on the ground, did he really defeat them all by himself? She's in shock, because the level of power he's displaying now is absurd. All this power is far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Leaving the forest, She calls someone and confirms that her suspicions were correct. She warns that at this rate, he could actually reach Lord Ingolf's power level. The person on the phone then asks what the chances are that he's really this Kyoichiro guy. With a serious look, she answers without hesitation that the possibility is very high. On the other end of the line, Claudia gives a sinister and satisfied smile. She hangs up the phone and laughs to herself, thinking that everything went exactly as she imagined. With that, she thinks that things are about to get much more interesting from now on. Before a crowd of followers, Claudia begins her dark speech. Then she declares with a terrifying smile that everything is going according to the Lord's plan. Back in the dungeon, we see the crystals that witnessed our hero's training. Surrounded by defeated monsters, Kyosuke announces that his training is finally complete. With a confident look, he guarantees that this time, his power will hit Ingolf head-on. The scene shifts to an office, where a phone suddenly starts ringing. The man, Iwako Hideki, wonders who could be calling him now. He then answers the call with a sour expression, demanding to know who's speaking. On the other end of the line, a mysterious dark voice announces that it's Ingolf. Hearing the name, Iwako turns pale and frightened, unable to believe who is calling. He asks if something happened, but Ingolf says he just wants to clear something up with him. Ingolf then gets straight to the point and asks about a student named Asai Kyosuke. After hearing the answer, he hangs up, saying that was all he wanted to know. With the information he needed, Ingolf slams the phone down with terrifying force. Iwako despairs, because he can't reveal that Asai is actually Kyoichiro. He panics, screaming internally that if he tells the truth, he will surely die. On the other side, Ingolf looks ready to act, a cold determination in his eyes. Ingolf thinks Iwako is hiding something, but he has no proof, so he decides his next step is to investigate on his own somewhere else. Suddenly he stops, noticing something strange in his room. Someone has just slipped a letter under his office door. He picks up the envelope, wondering who could have sent him that message. As he reads the contents, his face fills with a fury he hasn't felt in a long time. With a hand shaking with rage, he crumples the paper, because now everything makes sense. He becomes enraged, screaming internally that he already knew this was the truth. The scene takes us to the past, with Ingolf apologizing to his friend Kyoichiro, but Kyoichiro says it's fine, and that he would help since his own city was destroyed. Ingolf then asks if he's sure, since the other mission would pay more. His friend just laughs and says those guys just want to show off. At this, Ingolf says he's too kind, always helping those who need it most. Kyoichiro looks to the horizon, with a smile that shows he's at peace with his decision. He then remarks that this place is a really good place to live. Ingolf explains that it's the best spot to admire the beautiful sunset. With a smile, Kyoichiro says he can see how much he loves this place. At this, Ingolf calls him by name, with a much more serious expression on his face. He reveals with a determined gaze that his greatest desire is to become stronger, and he doesn't want this just for his city, but to protect other places from danger. Kyoichiro then laughs and says he'll join him on this journey. Excited, he decides he'll use the time there to train and get stronger. The two then seal the deal, preparing for the great challenge ahead. Back in the present, he remembers they always trained together on that hill, but something terrible happened, changing the destiny of the two friends forever. Suddenly, their city was attacked, and everything started to burn without warning. Innocent people were caught in the middle of that inferno of flames and pure destruction. Ingolf could only watch, completely shocked by the horrifying scene. Then, he sees Kyoichiro standing in the middle of the fire with a terrifying expression. His childhood friend was now smiling like a demon, reveling in the chaos. He clenches his fist and decides he won't involve the other saints in this fight. With hatred in his eyes, he swears he will be the one to finish Kyoichiro. The scene cuts to Kyosuke, walking down the hall with a confident air. He thinks that the next training session is in a week, and that he'll get his rematch. Suddenly, he hears someone shout his name, stopping him in the middle of the hallway. It was Mateo, who runs towards him, celebrating that his master has finally returned. He asks what the hurry is, and the boy explains it's a letter from Iwako. Confused, he takes the letter Mateo was holding so urgently. Kyosuke then opens the envelope to see what Iwako's message was for him. Upon reading the contents, his expression changes instantly, showing the news wasn't good. Mateo asks what it said, but Kyosuke just crumples the paper in a rage. He then turns and walks away, coldly saying it was nothing important. Confused, Mateo is left behind, calling for the master who disappeared down the hall. Sayuki watches the scene from a distance, looking quite thoughtful about the whole situation. The wind blows outside, indicating that things are about to change again. On the old hill, Ingolf says he has finally arrived. Kyosuke recognizes the place and asks why he was summoned there. With a serious look, Ingolf confirms his suspicion, saying he already knows the truth. He then reveals that he knows his identity, calling him Misato Kyoichiro, his former friend. Unfazed, Kyosuke simply asks why he was summoned. Ingolf says the reason is obvious and starts walking towards his rival. At that, he unleashes his fiery aura, preparing to begin the final great battle, and with a furious shout, he swears he will erase Kyoichiro's existence from the world. But Kyosuke says the feeling is mutual, unleashing all of his dark power. With renewed determination, he declares that he himself will finish Ingolf right there. In the middle of the battlefield, Kyosuke decides to ask his rival a question. With a smirk, he asks how Ingolf managed to discover his identity. Ingolf says it doesn't matter, but that he'll tell at least part of the story. He then says this has nothing to do with the Saints, and that it's a personal matter. Kyosuke asks if that's why he chose to fight in such a special place. With a stomp that cracks the ground, Ingolf makes it clear there's no turning back. Filled with rage, he screams with all his might that he will never be able to forgive him. But Kyosuke says it's a coincidence because he feels the same way. The two then unleash their auras, preparing for the coming clash of power. Ingolf remembers that his mana armor blocks any kind of enemy attack. It doesn't matter if it's physical or magical, nothing can get through this absolute defense. He then yells at Kyoichiro, warning him that he has no chance of winning the fight. With a war cry, Ingolf fires a full power blast of golden energy. The power surges forward, destroying the field and tearing the earth in half with its force. The wave of energy heads straight for Kyosuke, who faces the attack without any fear. With a mocking look, Ingolf asks what Kyosuke is going to do now. He remembers that in their last fight, the boy could only dodge his direct attacks. So, he decides to strike with another shockwave to end the fight. But this time, Kyosuke charges forward, covered in a powerful blue aura. Ingolf is completely shocked, not expecting this from his rival. He can't believe the boy is charging head-on against his strongest attack. With a shout, Kyosuke unleashes his own magic, nullifying the shockwave. A green energy spreads across the field, revealing a power Ingolf had never seen. Suddenly, Kyosuke concentrates a fist of fire in his hand, absorbing Ingolf's power. It's shown that he can now use the same type of magic as his opponent. The two then exchange a full-force punch in an absurd clash of auras. The collision of their powers creates a massive explosion that kicks up dust everywhere. Despite the force of the blow, Kyosuke is thrown back, but he stays on his feet. He thinks that Ingolf's armor is truly as hard as a rock. Meanwhile, Ingolf can't believe he broke through the attack and is so much stronger. Ingolf notices his new physique and understands that the boy has been training hard, but he feels it's not just that. Something else is happening here. He then accuses Kyosuke, asking if he shamelessly copied his mana armor. With contempt, Ingolf finds it pathetic, a cheap imitation of his power. Ingolf then says he's figured out the trick and how his magic works. He reveals that this so-called vacuum magic only serves to copy others' spells, but he makes it clear that a cheap imitation will never work against the original power. He remembers his old-time magic and admits it was something to be admired. Ingolf confesses that he even looked at that power with a certain kind of respect, but he warns that Kyoichiro is not the same, and that his level has dropped significantly. He then unleashes his full aura and screams that his rival will never break his armor. With a hateful glare, Ingolf guarantees that victory in this battle is already his. Kyosuke then responds to the accusation, saying he was close, but wrong. He explains that vacuum magic is much deeper than just copying powers, and after a long time, he's finally ready to show his true technique. Ingolf recognizes the move, remembering it's the boy's final attack. Even so, he isn't fazed, as he thinks it won't make any difference. He then charges forward, screaming that no known spell can pierce his armor. With that, Ingolf leaps forward, ready to finish off his former friend for good. But Kyosuke prepares himself and begins to activate his powerful and mysterious vacuum magic. Ingolf screams for him to eat this and throws his most powerful punch yet. But suddenly, in the middle of the attack, Ingolf is cut. He stumbles back a few steps, completely shocked by the outcome of the clash. Ingolf can't believe the boy actually managed to wound his arm. He wonders if his armor was broken, but thinks that's impossible. In shock, he remembers that no one had ever managed to do that to him before. Kyosuke then warns him again that his magic isn't just about copying others. With a frightened look, Ingolf notices something new and asks what it is. Out of nowhere, Kyosuke appears with a sword of fire, surprising his opponent. Ingolf screams in desperation, not understanding what the hell that fire sword is doing there. It is then explained that vacuum magic can create anything from imagination. With the sword in hand, Kyosuke warns that now he will feel his power, and with a focused gaze, he says that Ingolf will taste the strength of his magic. Ingolf is shocked and asks if magic is born from imagination, and if he created the Sword of Flames. Kyosuke confirms with a serious look, explaining that the blade was made to pierce his armor. He then reveals that this is his own original magic, one that doesn't exist anywhere else. Ingolf coughs with difficulty, still not understanding how that was possible. In his mind, he questions how the sword managed to get through his mana armor. Confusion and rage are written all over Ingolf's face as he refuses to accept the situation. Kyosuke then reminds him that he bragged about his armor blocking everything, but that's not true. Enraged, Ingolf furiously shouts that his mana armor is impenetrable, but Kyosuke coldly cuts him off, stating with a smirk that there is indeed a blind spot. He then reveals that the attribute of Ingolf's magic converts mana into metal. Ingolf is stunned and asks how he knows that, and Kyosuke says he used it against him. A memory flashes in Ingolf's mind, and he finally understands what the boy did earlier. Kyosuke explains that if he can reproduce a magic, it means he fully understands it. With that in mind, he says that no matter how hard it is, metal isn't invincible, and that's why he created a blade of flames with an extremely high temperature. made specifically to melt metal. Ingolf remembers that his armor repelled countless spells, and that not even fire could break it. He then wonders just how immense the heat is that the young man put into that sword. With a cold gaze, Kyosuke warns him to just accept it, as he can no longer stop his attacks. But Ingolf grinds his teeth and yells not to be underestimated like that. He says that just because the boy has a new trick, it doesn't mean he's already won the fight. With that, Ingolf charges forward with everything he's got, preparing a devastating punch against Kyosuke. Filled with hatred, he bellows that he's going to beat all that arrogance out of the boy's body. Ingolf's fist clashes against the blade of fire, causing a gigantic impact. Kyosuke maintains a focused expression, holding the sword firmly against the attack. With a swift move, he parries the blow and counterattacks with a precise slash. Ingolf is thrown backward, his entire body cut by the flaming blade. He falls to his knees, bleeding and surrounded by the flames of defeat. In total disbelief, Ingolf glares at the boy, refusing to accept what just happened. Kyosuke then explains that when he gets emotional, his movements become predictable. To finish, he says with a smile that Ingolf never got rid of that old habit. Tired of the talk, Ingolf tells the boy to shut up with a furious glare. He loses his patience and charges forward screaming, unleashing a wave of power at Kyosuke. Kyosuke clicks his tongue, questioning if he's really going to keep coming at him. Kyosuke then easily dodges the desperate attack, showing his superiority in the fight. But Ingolf manages to get close and tries to land another blow, but Kyosuke just builds up his aura while dodging the attacks. He yells for the boy not to dare lecture him about the past. With his eyes glowing with rage, Ingolf continues his hateful speech, and then he accuses him of burning his homeland to the ground. Suddenly, Nathaniel appears and asks Ingolf to wait, trying to calm the situation down. But Ingolf doesn't listen to him, and continues to scream in pure agony and fury. Kyosuke realizes there's no other way, and says, "All right," preparing a new spell. With a quick motion, he fires a powerful electric attack towards Ingolf. The magic explodes in a blue flash, forcing Ingolf to retreat from the impact. He complains about the hit, but soon realizes it was just a smokescreen. Before he could finish his sentence, the fire blade stops right in front of Ingolf's face, who stares with a look of pure disbelief. With a pained expression, Ingolf asks why this is happening to him. He says he thought Kyosuke was his rival, someone against whom he could surpass himself. Then, he once again questions the reason for this betrayal, his chest bleeding. In his final lament, he asks why the boy didn't just let him keep believing that. Kyosuke turns with a serious look, calling Ingolf's name, about to say something, but suddenly, a purple beam of light strikes Ingolf right in the back. Ingolf is caught by surprise, not understanding where that cowardly attack came from. From a distance, on top of a cliff, a mysterious figure was watching the whole fight. It was Claudia, who says with a smile that she won't let things end just yet. Kyosuke seethes with rage upon noticing her presence, hatred written all over his face. He then yells Claudia's name, confirming the identity of the true culprit. The priestess greets him, saying it's been a long time, and calls him Kyoichiro. Kyosuke is in shock, as he realizes Claudia has already discovered his true, secret identity. With a malicious smile, she says she'd love to catch up, but that will have to wait. The priestess then announces that the real fun is just beginning, enveloping Ingolf in her aura. Ingolf is also hit by the purple magic and begins to groan in pain, surrounded by the energy. Ingolf's body begins to contort bizarrely, controlled by her magic. Desperate, Kyosuke realizes what's happening and recognizes Claudia's control magic. From the top of the cliff, she orders them to kill each other as much as they want, with a sadistic gaze. Claudia stands watching as the two prepare to fight. Then, Shirato Sayuki appears at her side, announcing that it's finally time to act. Kyosuke looks up, completely shocked, unable to believe what he's seeing. He recognizes his classmate, Shirato Sayuki, with a look of pure disbelief. Confused, he asks her why she's reporting to Claudia, the enemy. As he lands, he struggles to dig his feet into the ground to keep from being dragged further. With a dirty face, he grits his teeth in anger, feeling the opponent's pressure. Ingolf's hand starts to bleed, showing the immense power flowing through him. He groans in pain as his muscles contract in a completely inhuman way. Kyosuke notices his muscles are swelling like crazy, in a bizarre way. He remembers that humans have limits and wonders if Claudia used hypnosis to break them. He curses Claudia, concluding that she really is the queen of mind control, just as he expected. He realizes Ingolf's speed is on another level, and knows he has to stop that first. With a focused gaze, Kyosuke aims at a specific point to attack with his sword. Ingolf charges like a bull, and Kyosuke prepares to execute his risky plan. In the blink of an eye, Kyosuke manages to land a direct hit on his opponent's legs. The cut is deep, and blood gushes from Ingolf's leg as he feels the impact. Kyosuke celebrates inwardly, believing his attack strategy worked perfectly. He thinks that Ingolf's mobility is shot, and the fight is in the bag. But Ingolf ignores the pain and punches the ground with terrifying, immense force, and he continues his attack on Kyosuke, who dodges. Annoyed, Kyosuke curses the situation, not expecting him to be so tough. Even after taking a hit like that, Ingolf is still on his feet and ready for more. He lets out a grunt of pain, but the hypnosis forces him to keep fighting relentlessly. Kyosuke is stunned by the sight, not understanding how he can still move like that, and Ingolf keeps coming at him with his attacks. But Kyosuke dodges. Kyosuke slides back to escape the deadly blow. Kyosuke watches Ingolf from a distance. Wondering what's happening to him, Ingolf starts to groan in pain, bringing a hand to his face as if fighting something. Then, Kyosuke notices the evil aura around Ingolf is slowly fading. He wonders if the hypnosis failed, but quickly dismisses the idea. Claudia doesn't make mistakes. If she planned to use Ingolf, she would have surely ensured every detail was perfect. Something doesn't add up, but he decides to think about it later as he sees the magic armor cracking. Seeing this opening, he decides it's time to attack with a new magic. With his sword in flames, he prepares to end the fight once and for all. Kyosuke then charges forward at full speed, ready to deliver the final blow. Ingolf turns towards him, still resisting the priestess's mind control. With a final roar of fury, he lunges at Kyosuke with a desperate punch. Their attacks collide, causing an explosion of purple and golden energy across the field. Ingolf's arm bleeds, but he keeps advancing with brute, superhuman strength. Kyosuke faces him and yells for him to take this attack, concentrating the magic in his hand. He then imagines the entire shockwave from the explosion being driven straight into Ingolf. The magic explodes in Ingolf's chest, shattering all his defenses at once. With the impact, the purple aura of control finally dissipates. Freed from the hypnosis, he falls to his knees, his body completely exhausted from the battle. Kyosuke catches him, and Ingolf admits in a weak voice that he has finally lost. With a victorious smile, Kyosuke confirms that yes, he has won the fight once again. Ingolf gives a faint laugh and says that even in victory, he's still a big talker. He then reveals that their exchange of blows made him certain of something very important. Before passing out, he claims that it wasn't Kyosuke who burned down his homeland in the past. Ingolf passes out completely, leaving Kyosuke confused by the bombshell revelation. Not understanding a thing, Kyosuke wonders what the hell Ingolf was talking about all this time. The scene shifts to night, with the full moon illuminating the now silent battlefield. With a pained groan, Ingolf finally begins to regain consciousness. By his side, Kyosuke watches him from near a campfire and points out that he's awake. Ingolf calls him Kyoichiro, still a bit groggy, as the young man stares at him seriously. He looks at his bandaged arm and asks if the boy did that. Kyosuke explains it's just first aid, but Ingolf wants to know why he helped him. Ingolf questions him since they're rivals, and doesn't understand this contradictory action. The young man then reveals that something has been bothering him, and he really needs to ask. He wants to know what Ingolf meant when he said he hadn't burned down his homeland. Kyosuke mentions that he heard about the destroyed village, and asks if the culprit was ever caught. From his tone, Ingolf realizes his suspicions were right all along. With a serious expression, he finally agrees to tell the boy the whole truth. He begins the story, saying it all happened 20 years ago, a week before the calamity. Ingolf reveals that he saw Kyoichiro's silhouette setting his homeland on fire. Kyosuke is in shock, unable to believe or process what he just heard. Ingolf explains that at first, he didn't believe it, as he never thought he would do something like that. Amidst the flames, he saw Misato Kyoichiro's silhouette laughing at everyone's misfortune. Kyosuke is completely lost, trying to understand what's happening in this whole story. He denies doing it, and wonders who Ingolf really saw that tragic night. Right after the fire, Ingolf says they found a plan in his room to assassinate everyone. Kyosuke is shocked by the revelation, unable to believe the level of the setup. With that, the conclusion was that Misato was a wolf in sheep's clothing all along. That was the conclusion the Pentagram Saints reached, falling right into the trap. And the result of this mess, as Ingolf himself says, is something Kyoichiro knows all too well. Kyosuke realizes Ingolf isn't lying, which means someone orchestrated all of this. The person Ingolf saw pretending to be him was a false image created by the real culprit. The ability to mess with senses and plant memories, only one person could do that. With a look of hatred, he concludes that the culprit is Claudia. He's already copied her hypnosis, and knows the magic affects the brain and forces behavior. Kyosuke asks if Ingolf had considered that, and Ingolf confirms he had the same suspicion. Ingolf explains that the spell Claudia used wasn't to help him in battle. If she can implant the command to fight to the death, faking abilities would be easy. With a serious look, Ingolf begins to understand the depth of her manipulation. Kyosuke realizes she might have made Ingolf confuse him with the real arsonist. With a smile, he understands that this revelation finally explains everything that happened. Anyway, Ingolf stands up and says he owes him an apology. With a fist to his chest, he admits he misjudged Kyoichiro and was terribly wrong. Kyosuke just watches him, surprised by Ingolf's attitude and regret. Ingolf says he didn't trust him, and now he must accept the consequences of his mistake. He then draws a dagger and calls out Kyoichiro's name with a pained expression. With the knife in hand, he offers it to the young man and asks him to kill him. Ingolf says that burying his body there is the least he deserves for his sin. Kyosuke is silent for a moment, processing the extreme request, but he just calls Ingolf's name, who looks at him, expecting the blade. Kyosuke then invites him to look at the view and remember the days they trained together. Ingolf is moved and reminds Kyoichiro that they were once brothers in arms. He says that this strong bond of friendship didn't just break on its own. Kyosuke then asks who broke that trust, and if they're just going to let it slide. He reminds him that they now have a common enemy, and because of that, makes an invitation. With his hand outstretched, he asks Ingolf to join him and settle the score. Ingolf is shocked, completely surprised by the unexpected proposal from his old rival. With a smirk, Kyosuke provokes him, saying that taking things lying down isn't his style. A small smirk appears on Ingolf's face as he gets the message. He then laughs and agrees that the kid is absolutely right about that. A memory from the past shows that this partnership between them seems to be destiny, and with their hands joined, Ingolf realizes he still has something to do in this world. The scene cuts to the extinguished campfire, showing that the night has passed and the decision has been made. Ingolf then asks if they are heading to the Mediterranean, and Kyosuke confirms the plan. He explains that Claudia has built a city for her followers, which could be her base. Ingolf offers to go with him, but Kyosuke immediately refuses, saying no. Kyosuke explains that the magic forces them to fight to the death, so Claudia already thinks one of them is dead. Hearing this, Ingolf understands they'll use this to their advantage, and the young man confirms the plan. With a smile, he says she thought one was enough, but it's time to show her she was wrong. He asks Ingolf to keep acting like a saint, as it will be easier if he is presumed dead. He also warns that Nathaniel's movements have been very suspicious and deserve attention. With a look of confidence, the young man turns to Ingolf and says he's counting on him. Ingolf then responds firmly, saying he can leave it to him, accepting the mission on the spot. And so, the two former rivals part ways, each with a clear objective in mind. After everything, the next step of his revenge finally became clear to Kyosuke. He clenches his fist in hatred, vowing that she will regret everything she's done. Looking at the moon, he remembers the name of his true enemy, the treacherous Claudia. The scene shifts to a ship on the high seas, with the sun shining and gulls flying. Kyosuke travels alone, leaning against the side of the boat, lost in thought about the future. He reflects on the many things that happened in Germany, leaving it all behind now. A memory of Matteo shouting to him from a distance surfaces, a reminder of his loyalty to the very end, but he smiles, thinking about how his beef with Ingolf took a crazy turn. He never imagined he'd make peace with someone he swore had betrayed him. He straightens up, knowing he can't afford to be sentimental forever. His destination now is an island in the middle of the Mediterranean, a place quite isolated from the world. That's where Claudia has gathered her followers and built a city just for her cult. It sounds like a ridiculous idea, but that's where the priestess is currently hiding. If it's a city of believers, he'll infiltrate as one of them to find an opening. To do that, he decides he first needs to use his void spell to camouflage himself. The magic isn't perfect, but it will keep his presence hidden when he needs it. Suddenly, a man approaches him, asking if he's also here to worship the so-called bourgeoism. He figures out this is the name of Claudia's new religion, and replies that it's something like that. The man says he's quite devout for a young guy, but warns him that devotion alone isn't enough. He brags that he expects to see Claudia, which is why he brought a hefty offering. The rich man then explains that only high-ranking followers get to see the leader. Kyosuke listens intently, and starts to recall some important information about the cult. He remembers that bourgeoism ranks its followers, most likely based on donations. Just then, an announcement signals they're about to disembark, and the man gets ready to leave. He turns to say goodbye to Kyosuke, wishing him luck on his journey of faith. But suddenly, he stops and looks back, feeling like he's forgotten something. The man scratches his head, swearing he was just talking to someone a second ago. Unable to remember, he goes on his way, while Kyosuke watches him from a distance. Kyosuke smiles, satisfied to see his presence hiding magic worked. He thinks that it's time to settle the score from 20 years ago, and from Germany too. As he disembarks, he focuses on his goal and whispers the name of his nemesis, Claudia. The scene reveals the city's luxurious architecture, looking more like a vacation paradise. Kyosuke looks up, feeling the heat of the sun, ready to begin his revenge. Kyosuke walks through the crowd of followers, wondering if this is his final destination. Suddenly, he raises his gaze and finds himself facing a gigantic wall. The structure is so colossal that Kyosuke looks like an ant next to it. A man beside him explains that it's the Borgo Tower, an entire city for believers. Other followers comment in awe that Lady Claudia simply bought the whole island. He gets a little tense, not having imagined her power was this great. A flashback shows that 20 years ago, Claudia only had a small monastery here, and now she's built this empire, leaving the young man shocked by the cult's evolution. But he gives a slight smile. With so many followers, it'll be perfect for a smooth infiltration. The security at the entrance looks tight, but to him, that doesn't matter at all. After all, as long as he has his void magic, no one will be able to truly notice him. With that, he passes through the inspection without any issues, as the guards don't see anything unusual. A guard then accepts him as a first-rank bourgeois and hands him his credentials. He explains that the ranks determine the floors, and for now, he can only access the first one. To move up, he must pass the tests of faith, and only at the 7th rank can he see Claudia. The guard tells him to proceed, and Kyosuke prepares to enter the gigantic tower. His fake identity worked, and the recognition block will make the guard forget everything. An overhead view reveals the immensity of the structure. The true city of the faithful. The place has impressive architecture, with statues and bridges everywhere. He thinks he's on the 1st floor and can hardly believe this is inside a tower. As he walks through the streets, he notices a strange commotion up ahead. He then recognizes the man from the boat, who's arguing with the guards of the next area. The rich man shouts that he'll pay whatever it takes and demands they let him pass. But the guard refuses, warning him that 1st-rank followers cannot enter the upper floors. Furious, he doesn't care about the rules and charges at the guard with his briefcase. He screams desperately that he will find Lady Claudia, no matter the cost. But he's struck by a magic barrier that electrocutes him with a brutal shock. With that, the man collapses to the ground, completely unconscious, with smoke rising from his body. The guards don't even flinch at the scene, as if it were a common occurrence. Kyosuke gets the message, realizing that brute force will get him nowhere here. He understands that Claudia must be at the top, so he'll need to climb the ranks first. To do that, he'll have to pass whatever test this crazy religion throws at him. The young man clenches his fist tightly, showing he's more than ready for the challenge. With a determined look, he declares that he'll climb their hierarchy starting from the bottom. The scene cuts to a luxurious hall, where preparations for the tests are beginning. A servant shows the list of new followers to Father Samoa and asks him to choose the tests. The priest grumbles with disdain, saying that more pathetic lambs are arriving today. With a malicious smile, he then announces that he's going to test all of them again. Kyosuke sits on a bench, thinking how easy it was to enter the tower unnoticed. Now he needs to pass the rookie test to level up inside. Just then, a white dove suddenly lands right in front of him, leaving him confused. He carefully picks up the bird and notices it's carrying a small letter on its leg. The magical message instructs the new follower to go straight to the North Mansion on the 1st floor. With a smirk, he realizes this is his first challenge. He then stands up, declaring he'll crush anything that gets in his way. The scene shifts to a room where he and other rookies are greeted by a man. The priest introduces himself as Samoa, the one in charge of the 1st-level disciples. He then looks at the group and asks what brought each of them here. Samoa points to a girl, telling her to answer first, which makes her nervous. She explains that she came to find Miss Claudia to reach the top floor. Her village was struck by a mysterious illness, and her grandmother fell sick, so she hopes that Claudia might lend her some of her power. Kyosuke finds her actions very noble, coming alone to save her family and her people. Kyosuke notices the girl's worn-out clothes, wondering how someone like her became a follower. Just then, the other guys start mocking her, saying that dreaming of reaching the top is free. Samoa gets annoyed by the chatter and asks if they find something funny. He confronts the two, wanting to know if they don't wish to see Lady Claudia as well. The guys cringe in fear, complaining they were dragged into this by a brat. With that said, the priest warns that climbing this tower is no simple task. He raises a finger and asks if anyone there knows what the numbers 1 and 90 mean. He then explains that 1 year is the average time to level up, and 90% is the percentage of people who get kicked out before even leaving the 1st floor. Utterly crushed. Still, he thinks aiming high is a good attitude and supports all this ambition. Now, Samoa prepares to announce the rookie group's first challenge. He states there will be 3 challenges in total, and the first is about to be revealed. Their mission is to go to the Northeast Dungeon and kill 500 monsters there. One of the guys is shocked by the number, shouting that 500 is completely absurd. Samoa then shows some stones, explaining they are proof of their kills. He says there's no time limit, so they should take their time and not rush. With that, he ends the conversation, saying he expects good results from everyone there. As they leave, the 2 guys stay behind, complaining about the absurd mission they received. But the girl wastes no time and starts walking down the hall with a determined look. Kyosuke watches her from the side, noticing the girl's confident attitude even after the shock. Alone, she moves forward down a very long hallway, not looking back for a second. Suddenly, she stops and turns around, saying she honestly didn't expect that. Just then, she notices Kyosuke was there and recognizes him as the guy from before. He asks what she didn't expect, and she explains that everyone freaked out about the test, except him. The girl gives a slightly awkward smile and admits that of course she's scared too, but for the sake of her village, she says she has no choice but to fight. Then she asks if he also wants to go to the top and suggests they both do their best. He thinks there's something different about this girl, but decides not to look into it for now. The scene changes, showing the tower at night with a few lights on in the windows. Elsewhere, an old man in a suit thanks a priest profusely for some help he received. The old man celebrates with a laugh, saying he can finally level up in life, but Samoa acts with contempt, saying it was nothing, just divine providence. Satisfied, the man leaves the room happily, humming and clutching his briefcase tightly. Someone else serves the priest a glass of wine, commenting that it was another success. He explains that Samoa's plan is brilliant, as he creates impossible tests to squeeze money out of people. Samoa confirms, saying the monsters are strong and the weak will never get through, and those who can't pay can just cling to their dreams until they're crushed. At that, he begins to laugh maniacally, revealing his true personality. From somewhere in the tower, Kyosuke seems to sense all this evil coming from the priest. He thinks the guy is like a cartoon villain, exploiting others without a second thought. Some disciples just want to see Claudia out of pure faith, and Samoa tramples all over that. The scene cuts to the next day, with someone knocking on the priest's door. Samoa, who is at his desk, asks in a bored voice who's there. Kyosuke then enters, bowing and apologizing for interrupting him. Without any hesitation, he announces that he has finished the test and brought everything that was asked for. Kyosuke throws a sack onto the desk, startling the priest with the sudden noise. Suddenly, a pile of shining purple stones tumbles out, leaving Samoa speechless. He's shocked, as it's impossible to have gathered all of that in a single day. Even while breaking into a cold sweat, he forces a smile and comments that the rookie is truly incredible. With a dark look, Kyosuke calls him by name, cutting off his fake praise. He then gets closer and advises him to close the windows so no one overhears any secrets. The priest gulps, realizing the boy knows much more than he lets on. He then wonders if the rookie overheard last night's suspicious conversation. Filled with hatred, he grips the arm of his chair tightly, cursing the boy in his thoughts. Samoa glares at the stones and says that this place is his domain, and he won't let some rookie mess it up. With a look of pure rage, he swears he will turn the tower into Kyosuke's tomb. Later that night, Samoa is in his office, thinking about what happened earlier. He's furious, finding it insulting that the rookie showed up just to give him that warning. To him, the kid tried to give a warning, but it's nothing more than cheap justice. With a wicked smile, he decides he'll give the rookie a very special second test. The scene shifts to the bourgeois disciples' dormitory, where Kyosuke is now staying. He looks out the window and notices that Samoa hasn't made a move against him yet, so he concludes the priest isn't stupid enough to try something inside the tower itself. But suddenly, a white dove lands on his window, surprising our Kyosuke. The bird delivers a new magic letter with the details of his second official test. He figures out the plan instantly, realizing they want to get rid of him using a test as an excuse. It's the perfect chance to fulfill a tower requirement and eliminate him, like killing two birds with one stone. According to the letter, his mission is now to simply defeat the dungeon boss. Kyosuke smirks. He knows it's an obvious trap, but he doesn't seem to care. Without hesitation, he decides to face the challenge head-on, unafraid of what's to come. The scene cuts to a lava cave, the dungeon on South Bourgeois Island. Kyosuke enters the lava cave, remarking that the heat inside is no joke. He knows Samoa wants to kill him, so he already expects the difficulty here to be high. And if the priest has a plan B, he'd better have an ace up his sleeve too. With that, he activates his own magic, preparing for anything that might appear. With a focused gaze, he stays alert, waiting for the first attack from the darkness. Suddenly, a fiery explosion lights up the area, revealing he wasn't alone. A giant flame monster appears, revealing itself as the dungeon's first enemy. The creature, a flame rex, lets out a loud roar and charges at him with full force. To make matters worse, these are high-level fire monsters that usually hunt in packs. Kyosuke confirms the dungeon's level is high, but a smile shows he doesn't mind, so he uses his void magic, creating several ice crystals around him. The crystals fly forward, striking the fire monster head-on with a brutal impact. The lava creature falls to the ground, completely defeated by his ice magic. He realizes his training to fight Ingolf is finally paying off. With that, he decides to keep up the pace, continuing to advance through the dangerous cave. In the dungeon, a hooded man watches everything from a distance, waiting for the right moment to act. Far away, an assistant asks Samoa if he's sure about this new disciple. The guy is worried, since the rookie passed the test in one day and might even kill the boss. But Samoa replies that's not going to happen, and asks if any rookie has ever beaten that boss. And to make sure, he reveals with a wicked smile that he's already sent an assassin after the kid. The assistant turns pale, repeating the word assassin in a very worried voice. The priest then confirms it's a professional killer, and that the rookie won't survive. Back in the cave, the assassin understands the situation and prepares to finish the job. Suddenly, he sees the dungeon boss get defeated in an instant, leaving him shocked. He thinks to himself that Samoa warned him the guy was strong, but this was an absurd level of power. Even so, he believes Kyosuke hasn't noticed him yet, and prepares his perfect ambush. Without a sound, the assassin draws his dagger and lunges forward at full speed. He leaps behind Kyosuke, yelling that his head is as good as gone, ready for the final blow, but the attack is suddenly blocked, sending the assassin flying with a dull thud. Lying on the ground, he looks up, unable to believe his surprise attack failed so miserably. The assassin looks at the ice spirits, wondering if the kid was the one who did that. He's trapped, not understanding how Kyosuke knew exactly where he was hiding. Kyosuke then explains that the hunter often gets careless and becomes the hunted. Just then, the killer notices some purple magic butterflies starting to fly around him. It's revealed to be a powerful tracking spell from the Void class. He comments that it was a good idea to prepare this insurance to protect himself from the trap. With a confident smile, Kyosuke shows he was in control of the situation the whole time. Wasting no more time, he lunges forward and grabs the assassin by the collar. Then he tells him it's a shame, But the priest's plan didn't work out as expected. The scene cuts to the office, where Samoa suddenly jumps in shock at his desk. That's because the assassin's bloody hand is thrown right in front of him, with a dull thud. The priest stares at it in shock, stammering, not knowing what to say or do. Kyosuke appears in the room, proving he not only survived but came back for revenge. He pretends to be tired, commenting that the fight was tough and the boss was strong. And to top it off, he mentions that a hooded guy attacked him, as if on someone's orders. He wonders aloud who would do such a thing, making Samoa furious on the inside. Then Kyosuke leaves, saying he's looking forward to his third and final test. The priest is left confused, wondering why the kid didn't report the attack. But then it clicks, and he finally starts to understand what Kyosuke is all about. He figures the kid either has no solid proof or thinks the report would be ignored. In that case, Samoa decides he'll have to execute the rookie with his own hands. Even if the kid is strong, he opens a secret drawer and says it doesn't matter. Inside is a red ring, which he explains is a gift from Lady Claudia herself. With a look full of hatred, he vows that with the ring, he will erase Kyosuke for good. At night, two guys walk down the street. One of them lets out a heavy sigh, completely exhausted. He complains about missing his quota again, saying things have gotten brutal since Samoa became a priest. The blonde guy adds that he ran away from home, leaving everything behind to try and make it here. But at this rate, he wonders if he'll ever make it to the second floor. Kyosuke overhears their conversation from a distance, his expression serious and thoughtful. The scene shifts to two guards. They comment on how quiet it is, noting that no one comes by anymore. Suddenly, Kyosuke approaches, saying, "Excuse me," catching one of the guards by surprise. With a smile, he says he just wanted to ask them a quick question. After they answer, he thanks them for their help and walks away, leaving the guards confused. One of them wonders what that was about. He found the kid to be pretty weird, honestly. He had asked for the date of a priest's inspection, already plotting his next move. A few days pass, and a messenger pigeon lands on the window, bringing news. He reads the letter, which announces the details of the final test for that floor of the tower. Smiling, he thinks that Samoa is incredibly unlucky, which just proves his lack of faith. Then he prepares to act, activating his powerful void magic once again. Suddenly, several white doves begin to fly throughout the city, emerging from Kyosuke's window. The magical birds spread across the sky, each carrying an important message to deliver. People on the street are startled, shouting and wondering what's happening. Then, the doves begin delivering letters to everyone, leaving the crowd completely confused. The girl from before receives one too and stares at the paper, not understanding what's written on it. Even a white-haired man who seems quite important receives his message. He takes the letter with a curious look as one of the doves lands on his shoulder. From his balcony, Kyosuke watches everything and says that finally, all the pieces are in place. With a smirk, he thinks it's time for Samoa to pay for treating the faithful like trash. The scene changes to an arena, where Samoa greets him, saying he's finally arrived. He then announces the start of the final test and asks if Kyosuke is ready. The boy replies that he is, and says he's honored that Samoa is personally handling his final test. Samoa is furious at the mockery, thinking how the bastard is playing innocent. He knows that Kyosuke overheard his schemes and that he sent an assassin to silence him. To him, the first floor of the tower is his paradise, and he won't let anyone ruin it. Filled with rage, Samoa vows to erase the rookie right then and there, no questions asked. But Kyosuke smiles and comments that it looks like they have a pretty big audience today. Samoa is shocked to see a crowd arriving to watch their final test. The crowd murmurs that he's the believer who broke the record, and that Samoa himself will fight him. The girl from before is also there, and confirms that everything is exactly as the letter said. The scene shows the packed arena, with everyone waiting for the great showdown to begin. The priest is a bit lost, staring at all the people who appeared out of nowhere. He then realizes it was Kyosuke who gathered everyone and wonders what his plan is. Suddenly, he breaks into a cold sweat, thinking it can't be what he's imagining. Kyosuke then shouts loudly, calling for the attention of all the believers on the first floor. He reveals that he has uncovered Samoa's corruption, that he accepts bribes and sent an assassin. The priest turns pale, cursing the kid in his mind for exposing everything in front of everyone. From a distance, the white-haired man just watches the conflict unfold, looking very interested. Samoa yells that it's ridiculous, and that everything the rookie is saying is a huge lie. But inside, he's panicking, thinking he's screwed if the boy has any proof. Losing his patience, Samoa yells, "That's enough talk," and that the test will begin right now. He unleashes his dark aura, vowing to kill him, because the dead can't talk. Then, several shadow monsters appear and rush to attack Kyosuke with everything they've got. The audience is in shock, with one man explaining that this is high-level summoning magic. With a malicious smile, he warns that if Kyosuke survives, he'll pass, but that this is the end for him. He then points at Kyosuke and yells for his shadow monsters to get him now. But unfazed, Kyosuke prepares to fight, activating his void magic. In a single move, he unleashes a giant wave of ice that freezes the entire arena. Samoa's jaw drops, unable to believe the absurd power he just witnessed. Kyosuke then points at him and remarks, "Nobody said I couldn't just defeat the monsters." The crowd goes wild, shocked that he finished it all in one go and wondering who he is. The girl from before is impressed, commenting that the guy's magical power is insane. Trembling with rage, Samoa composes himself and tells the rookie not to get too cocky. He clutches his chest, thinking he won't let a piece of trash like Kyosuke disturb his peace. Then, he looks at his red ring and thinks it's no problem, because he has a trick up his sleeve. Samoa boasts, saying he has the ring that Lady Claudia herself gave him. Kyosuke notices the ring on his hand, already figuring out his next move. The priest then yells that he'll show his true power, unleashing a red aura. The jewel glows with a sinister energy as he prepares to attack with full force. But to everyone's surprise, after the light show, nothing happens in the arena. The crowd is confused, not understanding what happened or why the fight didn't continue. Samoa breaks into a cold sweat as the crowd mocks him, asking if that was his true power. He panics, because that ring was supposed to have given him immense power. Suddenly, a voice announces that the ring doesn't work for those with an impure heart. The white-haired man comments that what the rookie said wasn't a lie, after all. Kyosuke gives a slight smile, thinking that the man he was waiting for has finally arrived. The mysterious figure enters the arena, and Samoa stammers as he recognizes who it is. He introduces himself as Ajito Norman, a priest from the 5th floor, shocking everyone. Ajito then faces Samoa, saying that there's always a story behind a priest who can't use the ring. With a threatening gaze, he tells Samoa to explain everything, leaving him utterly terrified. Samoa trembles, stammering Lord Ajito's name, who stares back at him with a look of superiority. Kyosuke watches it all, thinking he didn't expect such a high-ranking priest to show up like this. But with a smirk, he realizes this is actually even better for his plan. Ajito then explains that he received a very strange message as soon as he arrived on the 1st floor. The letter said that Samoa's corruption would be exposed and invited him to the arena to see everything. The priest panics, unable to believe his scheme was discovered like this. In a serious voice, Ajito warns that arrogant scum will be punished and asks if he understands. Samoa then looks at Kyosuke, realizing he kept quiet just to expose everything now. Still, he thinks there's no proof, and that maybe he can get away with it if he just keeps quiet. Deciding to risk it, he swallows hard and prepares to start his act. He yells to Lord Ajito, claiming the corruption accusations are a huge misunderstanding. Then he swears he's a devout man who has never done anything shameful in his entire life. But Ajito asks that, if he's swearing, why didn't the ring react to his power? He explains that the ring enhances power based on faith, but it has another function. If someone with an impure heart uses it, a signal goes directly to a high-ranking priest. The crowd is in shock, with people unable to believe what the ring really meant. Kyosuke understands everything, thinking the ring is a very thorough way to catch traitors. With a smile, Ajito extends his hand and asks if he'd mind telling the truth. Samoa shrinks back, begging Lord Ajito to believe him and saying he'll explain, but the Lord loses his patience, telling him not to make him repeat himself and to just tell the truth. At that, the priest falls backward in shock, letting out a small shriek of pure fear. Ajito recalls how he cut the boy and forced the test to start early to hide something. With nothing to say, the priest can only stammer, his face full of dread. The Lord then shouts that he will no longer disgrace the name of the Burgo faith. Utterly defeated, the priest is speechless, just muttering nonsense. Ajito sits down next to him, ready to resolve the situation one way or another. He warns that he can force a confession out of him, but asks if his body can take it. Trembling from head to toe, Samoa finally gives in and begins to confess his crimes. He admits to imposing impossible tests and extorting money from the 1st floor faithful. The audience is horrified, listening to the confession and realizing the priest's corruption. Kyosuke just watches in silence as the corrupt priest finally faces justice. With the confession made, Ajito turns to the guards and orders them to take Samoa away. The soldiers grab the priest, who is dragged out of the arena, unable to resist. Then Ajito announces that it's time to deal with the mess that's been left behind. He turns to the crowd and gets the attention of all the 1st floor faithful. In a serious tone, he offers a sincere apology for the corruption of the former priest, Samoa. But he says that, in order not to tarnish the faith, he has a proposal for everyone. Ajito then announces that everyone present will be promoted directly to the 2nd floor. The crowd goes wild, celebrating the chance to become 2nd-level faithful. Then, he says if they're to thank anyone, they should thank Kyosuke for everything. Kyosuke stands in the center of the arena, receiving everyone's acknowledgement and applause. Ajito then thanks him for exposing the corruption and tells him his reward will come later. With the problem solved, the Lord turns and leaves the arena behind. Kyosuke thinks that this Ajito guy is much smarter and more dangerous than Samoa. The scene shows the crowd celebrating, including the girl, who can now move on. The girl smiles, thinking she needs to thank him properly later for everything. The scene shifts to Ajito, who is finishing up his report to an important figure. He emphasizes that the incident was resolved thanks to the actions of a single new follower. He then comments that if they had delayed, the church's reputation could have been tarnished forever. His superiors agree, saying the newcomer's conduct was exemplary and a model for others. With that in mind, Ajito prepares to take the next step in his plan. With a smirk, he turns and says he has an interesting proposal to make. The scene cuts back to the guards, who are still standing at their posts with not much to do. Meanwhile, Kyosuke climbs a staircase, a serious and determined look on his face. He then arrives at a new place, a kind of hanging garden with an incredible view. There, he thinks that he didn't expect to be promoted directly to the 5th floor of the tower, but in any case, he admits that climbing this fast was much better than he had expected. The scene then shifts to a luxurious mansion with a huge, fancy gate. Kyosuke excuses himself and opens the door, entering the room he was summoned to. Inside, Ajito greets him with a smile, saying that he's finally arrived. Kyosuke arrives, thanking Ajito for arranging his direct promotion to the 5th floor. But Ajito replies that there's no need for thanks, as it's natural to promote those who prove themselves. Kyosuke thinks that he still can't get a read on the guy, who gives off a completely different vibe than Samoa. Then, Ajito says he has some more news that he's sure he'll like. Kyosuke gets curious, wondering what kind of important news it could be. Then Ajito reveals that, because of the incident, they've decided to grant him an audience with Lady Claudia. Kyosuke is in total shock, as he never thought this would happen so quickly. With his adrenaline pumping, he clenches his fist tightly, feeling the pressure of the moment. Still, he tells the Lord it's an honor to receive such a special invitation, and with a confident smile, he says he will gladly accept the invitation. Elsewhere, Iwako asks in shock if the news is real, and gets a confirmation. Claudia informs him that the revived Kyoichiro has been defeated, and Ingolf's presence is proof. But Ingolf, with his arms crossed, says he didn't expect that from her. With a smile, Claudia apologizes and asks if the results weren't good. He agrees that she's right, as they got rid of an enemy thanks to her. But in his thoughts, Ingolf curses Claudia, calling her a manipulative fox. He thinks that now he's sure it was she who burned down his hometown in the past. The scene shows Nathaniel, who is watching the conversation between the three on a screen. The blonde man remains silent, processing everything with a very serious, calculating look. In his office, Iwako seems worried, saying that a lot has happened with Kyoichiro's death, but he suddenly kicks the table, yelling that this has solved all his problems. He celebrates wildly, throwing his arms up and cursing Kyoichiro. Back on the call, Claudia tells Nathaniel that the obstacles are gone. She then says they will soon discuss the divine gift ceremony. Ingolf hears this and tenses up, wondering what this ceremony could be. Ingolf abruptly interrupts the call, saying that's enough talk for now. But Nathaniel, with a calm smile, says they need to discuss the details one more time. With that, he suggests they leave this important part for their next meeting. The scene changes to show Kyosuke on the phone, confirming he understands the situation. On the other end of the line, Ingolf asks if it's safe for him to infiltrate without being noticed. Kyosuke then teases him, asking if Ingolf is worried about him. He assures him there's no problem, as he's trained this magic a lot since he went to Germany. Ingolf tells him to be careful and mentions the plan for the divine gift ceremony. Hearing this, Kyosuke falls silent, processing this new information. He then hangs up the phone, thinking about what this mysterious ceremony could be. With a determined look, he leaves the room, certain that Claudia is up to something again. The scene takes us to the 7th floor of the Tower of Believers, a gigantic place. Kyosuke finally reaches the sanctuary, the top floor of the immense tower. He recalls that, according to Ajito, there are only 3 days left until his meeting with Claudia, so he decides he needs to stay there and confirm something before time runs out. Suddenly, a voice emerges from the shadows, saying he saved them the trouble of finding him. He then realizes the mysterious person is Shirato Sayuki, standing there, watching him. She warns him that he's drawing too much attention, and tells him to follow her immediately. The scene changes to a bell tower, and he notices the place is completely deserted. So, Kyosuke decides to get straight to the point, saying he needs to ask something. He questions if she had anything to do with the hypnosis magic Claudia used on Ingolf. Sayuki just stares at him in silence, listening to the accusation with a serious expression. At this, he explains that the spell was incomplete, and Claudia doesn't make that kind of mistake. With that, he states that the only person who could have done it at that time was her, but he doesn't understand the reason, since he thought she was on Claudia's side. Before he can finish his question, she interrupts him, ready to give her answer. She then confesses that she did it because she doesn't want to let him die again. He's completely shocked by the revelation, not understanding what she means by again. Sayuki looks at her own wrist, preparing to show him the whole truth. Suddenly, a strange mark glows on her arm as she begins to explain. Seeing the mark, Kyosuke starts to have a faint memory of having seen it before. A flashback begins, showing that 20 years ago, he found a girl being attacked. Back then, he saw a werewolf monster being impaled by energy stakes. The little girl had awakened her power, creating an explosion of light spikes out of nowhere. However, she couldn't control the ability and ended up going into a berserk mode. He realized their meeting was fate, as she had the same power as him, but being inexperienced, using this ability took a heavy toll on her body. To stop the power from hurting her, he had to take drastic measures on the spot, so he decided to seal her power. And luckily, he succeeded. With his hands glowing, he held her firmly, controlling her rampant energy. He barely managed to keep her alive, leaving a red mark on her arm. Back in the present, he finally understands everything and realizes she is that girl. Sayuki confirms that she is, and begins to tell him what happened after she woke up. She remembers that he was accused of being a criminal who betrayed all his comrades, but she knew her savior would never do that, even if the whole world said otherwise. She explains that, to uncover the truth, she approached Claudia on purpose. To learn about the incident from 20 years ago, she dedicated herself and remained loyal to her. Over time, she gained her trust, but it took 10 long years. After an incident, she was ordered to find the current Misato Kyoichiro. At first, she doubted everything, not believing he had come back to life. So while he was training in Germany, she decided to contact his sister, Asahi Karin. When Karin described what Asahi Kyosuke was like, Sayuki was certain of everything. She realized with a faint smile that he was the exact same person as before. He was just like the Kyoichiro she knew, with the same mannerisms and smile. She then says that she is only alive today because of the help he gave her. Kyosuke is touched by her loyalty and sincerely thanks her for everything. With a slight smile, he seems to accept her gratitude and trust. He reflects that this girl believed in him for 20 long years, without ever doubting him. She says he's her ideal hero, and that's why she'll tell him the whole truth. With a dark look, she reveals that she has seen the worst future of all time, and she warns him that the only one who can change this destiny is him, asking for his strength. She asks for his help so that together, they can save the world from Claudia's ceremony. Kyosuke is speechless, wondering if she really saw the future. He can hardly believe what he's hearing, but Sayuki just confirms what he was thinking. She reveals that she used time magic, and that she actually came back from the future to change everything. Then she begins to describe how, in that timeline, an entire city was destroyed. Amid the chaos and fire, Claudia reigned with a malicious smile and a monstrous form. The girl explains that in that future, the world was completely dominated by Claudia. She says that if nothing is done, despair awaits them, and that's why she needs his power. Kyosuke processes the information, repeating that the world would be ruled by Claudia. Sayuki tells him that in that future, he ended up losing his life, leaving her devastated. In a flashback, she remembers the moment of his death, holding him in her arms. He was the one who used a void spell, unleashing the regression power she had. With his last strength, he asked her to use her power and change that terrible future. Back in the present, Kyosuke clenches his fist, saying he refuses to let that happen. He asks if the ritual is the cause of everything, and what exactly happens in that future. She then reveals that the calamity summoned by Claudia kills hundreds of millions of people. Kyosuke is in shock, repeating the name of that apocalyptic creature to himself. He remembers that 20 years ago, there was a monster they couldn't defeat. In the end, the only thing they could do was seal the entire dungeon. It's then revealed that this terrible monster was the legendary Beast of Calamity. Sayuki explains that with the creature under her control, Claudia rewrote the world. Everyone who opposed her was executed, creating a world convenient for her. With a furious look, Kyosuke finally understands Claudia's true ambition. He questions how she could just throw away her hero mask, and Sayuki confirms that she would. But suddenly, a hooded figure appears in their midst, moving very fast. The figure tries to attack, but Kyosuke blocks the kick with ease, surprising everyone. He glares at the person on the ground, wanting to know who they are and what they want with them. The figure removes their hood, revealing a girl with a calm smile on her face. Sayuki explains that Isha handled intelligence, and that they know each other well. Kyosuke is confused, as he thought she wanted to save her city and family, but with a sad smile, Isha reveals that Claudia has already killed everyone in her village. Isha begins to explain that the tower was built where her old village used to be. She says Claudia turned the place into a city just to gather her followers, and because of that, she ended up losing everyone she cared about. With eyes full of hatred, she screams that she will never, ever forgive Claudia. Sayuki consoles the girl, warning that if they do nothing, another tragedy will occur. Isha then begs him to understand, because Claudia doesn't care about the deaths. Desperate, she asks for Kyosuke's strength to help her stop the villain. Kyosuke closes his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He finally agrees with them, saying that Claudia's scheme must be stopped, but he also says he strongly relates to what Isha just told them. With a furious look, Kyosuke swears he will never forgive Claudia either. Hearing this, Isha gives a faint smile, satisfied with his response. However, he has a question and asks if killing Claudia will stop the ritual. Sayuki unfortunately replies that it won't, as the situation is more complicated than that. She explains that Claudia will use her followers' power as fuel for the monster. Sayuki warns that if the power is released, it will happen anyway, with or without Claudia. Kyosuke understands. If it were that easy, his future self would have already solved it. He then asks how they can stop it, and she says there's only one way. It's revealed that Claudia's power is being amplified by a secret device. Sayuki explains that if they can destroy this device, the ritual will be stopped. She says this was the only clue she managed to get after 4 failed futures. The problem is the device is protected by a barrier that not even she can break. But the advantage is that Kyosuke is already on the 7th floor with a scheduled audience. He then comes up with a plan, suggesting that if he neutralizes her, they can destroy the device. However, Kyosuke knows this tactic won't be easy to execute at all. He remembers the audience chamber will be filled with guards and other priests. Sayuki then reveals that her time regression ability is reaching its limit. This time, she barely managed to return to a moment just before meeting him. With that, the three of them look at each other, realizing this is likely their last chance. Kyosuke closes his eyes, understanding the weight of this final opportunity to save the world. Kyosuke knows that if they fail, the world will fall into Claudia's hands, but that doesn't matter. With a determined look, he swears he will stop Claudia no matter what, whatever it takes. He thinks to himself that he won't let her win twice, not 20 years ago, and not now. He faces the challenge head-on, knowing this is their last chance. If they fail this mission, the worst possible future awaits all of humanity. But with conviction, he declares he will stop Claudia, no matter what. The scene changes, and they prepare to act, walking through the streets of the Tower City. They then head into an alley, climbing down a ladder to a hidden place. Sayuki reveals it's the secret hideout she's been using all this time. Inside, they find a base filled with equipment and notes everywhere. Kyosuke is impressed, realizing she built all of this during her regressions. Sayuki begins to explain what she saw in the 4 timelines, detailing her mistakes. She explains that in the first world, she discovered Claudia's plan was to summon the beast, and it was in that timeline that he gave her the power to turn back time. From the second future onward, she tried to stop Claudia, but it was never that simple. On her second attempt, she managed to assassinate Claudia, catching the villain by surprise. However, even with Claudia's death, her power spiraled out of control. The ritual was activated anyway, with the released energy attacking Sayuki herself. Sayuki explains that Claudia's mana went berserk, and the Calamity Beast manifested anyway. Kyosuke then realizes the ritual is triggered by another mechanism, even if she dies. She says that on her 3rd try, she couldn't find Claudia's magical device. On the 4th time, she found the device but couldn't figure out how to destroy it. That's why she remained trapped, witnessing the same hopeless future over and over. Despite her failures, the girl looks at him with a determined gaze. But she says that even in defeat, there were important gains, like meeting Isha. Then, she reveals that the audience with Claudia was only possible thanks to her help. Sayuki then recalls the corruption of priest Samoa, which was exposed on the 1st floor. It's explained that Isha created the perfect opportunity for them to act. She made sure the news reached him, and manipulated the priest to investigate at the right time. Kyosuke realizes that without that incident, he wouldn't even be there right now. With a slight smile, he's impressed by their intelligence and their plan. He thinks that Sayuki must have used every means possible to create this chance. The hero concludes that she has seen far more despair than she dared to tell them. He reflects that in the first world, he entrusted her with the mission to change the desperate future. At that moment, Isha says that regardless, they need to stop Claudia's ritual. Sayuki agrees, saying that destroying the device that amplifies her power is non-negotiable. To do that, she explains, Kyosuke needs to neutralize Claudia during the meeting. She shows that she already has the cathedral's blueprints, and that she and Isha will handle the device. But Kyosuke warns that it won't be easy with all the priests around. That's why, she says, she needs him to create a specific spell for the plan. She then reveals she needs a powerful spell, one capable of changing the future. He's surprised, wondering what kind of spell could change such a rotten future. The scene changes to show mana accumulating in a device that looks like a giant clock. It's explained that the energy to summon the beast will soon be fully charged. On her throne, Claudia says with a smile that there will be some entertainment before the ritual. The tension builds as the camera focuses on the immense tower where everything will happen. Back at the bell tower, Sayuki asks if tomorrow is the big day, and he confirms. She worries about the preparations, but he reassures her with a smile not to worry. He reveals that he has mastered the spell, and Sayuki says she can finally see hope. She says she needs to thank him, but Kyosuke says he's the one who should be thankful. The girl is confused, and he explains that she kept resetting despite seeing the terrible future. He says he understands the loneliness of fighting while knowing what the future holds. Then, he remembers entrusting everything to her in the first timeline, and she carried that burden. He feels very grateful, and Sayuki replies that she wants to honor the trust he placed in her. With a sincere smile, he thanks her by her full name, Shirato Sayuki. She gets emotional hearing that, and whispers his name back, Kyoichiro. The girl looks away, seeming a little embarrassed by the moment. She covers it up with a small laugh, and he asks what's wrong all of a sudden. She explains that she just found it strange to be called by her full name like that. So, Sayuki asks him to just call her by her first name, which is more normal. He agrees with a smile, understanding her request and accepting her suggestion. Then he takes her hand and invites her to conquer the future together. With a determined and happy look, she simply agrees to his request. But Isha appears upside down, apologizing for interrupting their mood. Kyosuke gets all flustered, shouting that it wasn't that kind of romantic mood. She then changes the subject, announcing she's already memorized the cathedral's layout and routes. With that, Sayuki confirms they are finally fully prepared for the mission. Kyosuke takes the lead, saying he'll hold off Claudia while they act. Then the three of them bump fists, vowing to win this battle no matter what. The scene changes, and the day of the long-awaited audience with Claudia finally arrives. The guards greet him at the door, confirm he's there for the audience, and let him in. Inside, he communicates mentally, and the girls reply that the situation is good. They run through the tower, saying that at this rate, they'll reach the top without any problems. He's surprised that Aisha can use communication magic, and she jokes that it's quite useful. The hero reports he's almost at the audience chamber and is counting on their efforts. He faces the hallway, knowing the moment of truth has finally come for him. But the one waiting for him is Ajito Norman, who says he's been expecting his arrival. With a gesture, he invites him in, leaving Kyosuke a bit confused. With a determined look, Kyosuke braces himself for what's to come. He finally reaches the grand hall, where several priests await him in rows. The place is gigantic, and in the distance, he spots his true target on the throne. He finally comes face to face with Claudia, the woman behind it all. He won't waste the chance Sayuki suffered to create. With that, he walks through the hall, knowing he can't afford to fail. Suddenly, Claudia stands up and stares at him, looking surprised by what she sees. A guard asks if everything is okay, but she just replies that it was nothing. Kyosuke smirks. He expected this would happen. It's explained that the perception spell makes him look like a completely different person, but he knows Claudia will figure out the truth. It will just take time. In the future, Sayuki saw he used this same magic on her twice, and on both attempts, it took her about 5 minutes to break the spell. Now he gets ready, as the condition to activate the magic is very specific. He needs to lock onto the target visually and wait for a certain amount of time to pass. With that, he just needs to activate the spell before she realizes who he is. Meanwhile, Sayuki watches everything from an upper floor, ready to act. She notices that, as expected, security on the top floor hasn't been reinforced. However, even she doesn't have clearance to go further, and she'll need to take down those soldiers. Sayuki watches the guards on patrol, waiting for the right moment to strike. Just then, one of the soldiers approaches and says it's time to change shifts. The other guard just nods, not suspecting a thing. But out of nowhere, an explosion goes off, catching everyone's attention in the hallway. It's Mateo who emerges from the smoke, ready to create a distraction for the team. The guards are shocked by the sudden appearance, not understanding the invasion. The plan was to move while the soldiers were busy with the shift change. With the perfect opening, Sayuki charges at the enemies with everything she's got. Then, Aisha also appears, leaving one of the guards startled and confused. Sayuki releases a wave of energy, hitting all the soldiers at once. She stands in the middle of the hallway, her body glowing with a golden power. One of the surviving guards yells desperately, telling them to call Claudia right now. The remaining soldiers prepare to fight, aiming their spears firmly, but Aisha moves too fast, vanishing from their sight in the blink of an eye. With swift and precise strikes, she attacks the guards, clearing a path for Sayuki. Aisha says with a smirk that she won't let them pass. No way. The camera pulls back to show the fight is already over, with the guards on the ground. She breathes a sigh of relief, saying Sayuki's information was really worth it, as it worked. Now Sayuki says all that's left is for Kyoichiro to seal Claudia for good. So, they wait for the device's barrier to finally fall so they can act. The scene shifts to Kyoichiro, who receives their message in his thoughts with his eyes closed. Sayuki informs him they've reached the barrier, and he confirms he got the message. He then opens his eyes, mentally preparing for his part of the plan. With the first condition met, he thinks it's now his turn to play. He remembers that, according to Sayuki, the audience begins with a priest's speech, but he knows Claudia's true objective at this time is something else entirely. It's explained that the priest, Sinus Lester, was measuring his total amount of mana. Then he realizes the audience is a test to steal power from the faithful. If he doesn't meet the standard, they'll cut the audience short and ruin the whole plan. One of the priests stares at him with a shocked look, sensing his immense power. The priest is shocked, as he's never seen a follower with such an insane amount of mana. With a malicious smile, Kyosuke realizes the priest wants to secure him for Claudia. This fulfills the second condition, bringing Kyosuke one step closer to victory. Now he just needs to satisfy the activation condition for the spell he has prepared. Suddenly, Claudia bursts into a loud, uncontrolled laugh, startling everyone. The priests are confused, asking if Lady Claudia is feeling all right. With a smile, she says she finally understands the discomfort she felt earlier. She then faces him and reveals that she knows he is Kyoichiro, still alive. Everyone in the hall is shocked by the revelation, shouting the name of the former traitor. His disguise breaks, and he realizes she figured everything out faster than expected. He stands up, and Claudia says she can now see everything clearly. She approaches, saying that with that mana, she knows his spell exactly. Her eye glows, showing she's already figured out Kyosuke's entire plan. She confesses she's impressed, as she thought he had died under Ingolf's hypnosis. Claudia says she'll deal with that later, and starts walking towards him. Claudia points at him and warns that if she kills him right there, it's all over for good. Sayuki screams his name in despair, but he seems to already know everything that's about to happen. He explains that he already knew Claudia would send the priests to attack first, Then one of the priests turns and orders Kyoichiro to be eliminated at once, but the priest reveals he already knows what to do, pulling out a mysterious syringe. He and the others inject themselves, preparing to take the hero out for good. With a wicked smile, Claudia reveals they are the Rei Luoxi enhancement drugs. She believes that with so many soldiers, not even Kyoichiro stands a chance, but Kyosuke unleashes his aura, making the entire floor tremble around him. In the blink of an eye, one of the priests simply explodes into pieces in front of him. Claudia is in shock seeing his power, unable to believe the strength of those enhancers. With a smile, he reveals that everything is going exactly as he planned. He says everything is finally ready as he prepares his most powerful spell. With that, he fires a full power blast of purple energy at them. The attack hits the priests head on, who scream in pain as they're struck. Even Claudia suffers from the impact, trying to shield herself from the overwhelming magic. It's explained that this is an isolated space, completely cut off from the outside world. Just like that, Claudia became a caged bird with no escape. Confused, she asks what he plans to do by creating a space like this. He then reveals his plan, to destroy her device and stop the monster from appearing. With a smile, he explains that by sealing her here, the device's barrier will vanish. Claudia is shocked. He knows about the device and even the beast, but she realizes his true intention must be something else, since he's trapped in here with her. She questions him, asking how he plans to destroy the device while trapped in here too. Suddenly, Claudia has a revelation. It all becomes clear. With a smirk, Kyosuke says it looks like she's finally figured it out. She realizes he has a partner on the outside helping him. The villain says that if that's the case, it makes sense he knew about the device and the plan to destroy it. He confirms it, saying there's no reason to hide their objective anymore. He points at her, warning that she'll stay right here until the device is destroyed. Claudia then remembers she hasn't seen her attendant Sayuki for the past few days. Claudia thinks back to how she set everything up for either Ingolf or Kyosuke to die that day. The only way they could have both survived is if someone had interfered with her hypnosis. In a flashback, she confronts Sayuki, accusing her of being Kyoichiro's accomplice. Back in the present, she says she's disappointed. She had such high expectations for her. With an evil smile, she thinks to herself that Sayuki would have been a very useful puppet, but now she's useless. It feels like someone reaped the harvest before she could. Inside the barrier, the villain decides it no longer matters and focuses on her escape. She summons a sword of light, declaring she'll kill him and escape. Weapon in hand, she prepares to unleash her full power and break the seal. Kyosuke then remembers Sayuki's words and understands Claudia's plan. It's explained that with that sword, she stole mana from her followers during her audiences. He realizes she wants to drain his mana to break the barrier by force. Claudia readies her attack, warning him that she's coming with everything she's got, but his goal is different. He just needs to keep her sealed inside. The villain charges forward, and the hero braces for the attack. Claudia strikes with her sword, but Kyosuke uses speed clones to dodge the blow. He remembers Sayuki's warning. Killing Claudia would also awaken the Calamity Beast. So for now, he knows he must focus on one thing only. And so, he takes the sword's light attack head on, enduring the full impact. His job is just to stop her attacks until the girls can destroy the device. He backs away, making it clear his only role in this fight is to buy them precious time. With a smile, he taunts her, calling her naive and saying it's too easy to dodge. Irritated, Claudia says, "Is that so?" and prepares a new kind of attack. She summons a crossbow and charges a purple energy arrow ready to fire. Then she fires with all her might, launching a projectile of light at the hero. Kyosuke barely dodges, sensing the danger of her new ability, but she keeps firing arrow after arrow, forcing him to stay on the move to avoid being hit. He then realizes it's the same hypnosis spell she used on Ingolf. Claudia yells that even a graze from that arrow will be the end of him. The hero faces the hypnosis arrow. The technique is annoying, but he was expecting it. He keeps dodging and taunts Claudia, daring her to hit him if she can. With a smile, she says she has something interesting to tell him first. The villain reveals she has more pawns in her game than just the useless Sayuki. She tells him there's someone else she told about the device. Meanwhile, Isha points excitedly, shouting that she's finally found it. The camera focuses on the amplification device. The two of them are ready to strike. Sayuki moves forward, saying that if they destroy it, the ritual will be stopped. But suddenly, a voice warns them to stop, and a barrier appears before them. A mysterious man appears, stating he has orders to eliminate any intruders. He reveals himself to be the fifth-floor priest, Ajito Norman. Ajito questions her, asking why Claudia's own attendant would do such a thing. But Sayuki ignores him, saying she owes no answers to someone so blindly loyal to Claudia. She thinks to herself that everything is happening just as it did in the future, with Ajito as Claudia's right-hand man. And so, she prepares to fight. She has to defeat him to destroy the device. Ajito says this might be cause for celebration, leaving Sayuki confused. Ajito points at her, saying they can finally settle who truly deserves to be by Claudia's side. But Sayuki couldn't care less, saying she has her own reasons for fighting. A flashback reveals that as a child, Ajito's parents abused him horribly, but it was Lady Claudia who appeared and saved him from that life of suffering. Isha yells that Claudia was just gathering children with rare abilities. Even so, he says she was his light and taught him how to survive in this world. Ever since she saved him, he swore his loyalty and wanted only to be by her side. But Claudia chose to keep Sayuki with her instead because of her power over time. Because of that, he always saw her as an obstacle in his path to Claudia. With an evil smile, he thanks the gods for this chance to eliminate her. Isha desperately asks if he can't see that Claudia wants to take over the world, but he just responds coldly. And what's the problem with that? He believes true salvation lies in achieving his master's ideals. Sayuki interrupts her, saying that either way they have to defeat him. With a determined look, she declares she will never, ever let him win.